Hey guys. Tonight we begin with a question no chocolatier should ever ask. What if dessert could make you see sounds? It's the dawn of industrial candy, and somewhere in the heart of Pennsylvania, a young Milton Hershey is standing over his mixing bowl, eyeing a suspicious white powder that isn't sugar. What happens next turns snack time into a nationwide sprint of jittery optimism, questionable business decisions, and possibly the first candy bar capable of starting a jazz band. So before you get too cozy, take a second to gently tap that new hype button YouTube just added. It really does help little guys like me push through the algorithm. And be sure to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. Now, get comfortable. Let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. You stand in a quiet factory, cocoa steam curling around your face, thick enough to taste. The night air outside is cold, but in here, it's warm and humming, the kind of warmth that feels like it's hiding something. The machines haven't started yet, and the silence has weight. You stare down at a vat of molten chocolate, slow and glossy, and for a moment, you wonder if this is what creation feels like. The scent should be comforting. It isn't. It's too sharp, too alive. Ambition smells faintly illegal tonight, and you know that means something is about to happen. You dip a ladle into the chocolate, watch it spill back in slow ribbons, thick and perfect. This is what people dream of when they think of sweetness, of comfort, of something pure. And yet, even now, there's that notebook on the counter, its cover smudged with sugar and ink, corners curled from years of use. You've been staring at the same line for days. More energy? Not a question, really. More like a challenge. You didn't write it. At least, you don't remember writing it. But it's your handwriting, and that's unsettling enough. The factory feels different tonight. The lamps hum louder. The walls seem closer. You run your hand along the copper vat, feeling the faint vibration of heat. The workers went home hours ago, but you stayed, as you always do, chasing that feeling just before invention. You tell yourself this is what geniuses do. Stay late, think differently, push boundaries, ignore laws that haven't been written yet. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you can hear your mother's voice. Milton, moderation. You stir the chocolate faster. Moderation is for people without vision. The whisk makes a soft clicking noise against the edge of the pot, like a heartbeat speeding up. You imagine headlines already. Hershey creates the future. It sounds ridiculous, but so did everything before it worked. You glance again at the note. More energy? The question lingers in the air like a dare. You remember the man at the pharmacy, the way he smiled when you mentioned you needed something that wakes up the senses. He didn't ask why. He just wrapped the little package in brown paper and told you to go easy. You haven't opened it yet. It's sitting on the counter now, beside the mixing bowl, perfectly harmless looking. You tell yourself, it's just an experiment, a test, a tiny one. You untie the string, peel back the paper. The powder inside catches the light like snow under moonlight. You touch it with your fingertip. It numbs instantly. Your heartbeat jumps. This isn't sugar. Not really. But it's white. It's fine. It looks like it belongs here. You stare into the molten chocolate again, swirling and bubbling, and you wonder how much is too much. Then you pour. For a moment, nothing happens. Just chocolate, glossy and patient. You stir, slow at first, then faster. The scent sharpens, takes on an edge, something metallic and alive. The room feels like it's breathing with you. You laugh, though you're not sure why. Maybe because you can feel the idea working. Maybe because it's finally happening. You scoop a little with your finger, blow to cool it, and taste. It hits instantly. The sweetness crashes first, then something underneath bright, electric, wrong in all the right ways. You blink hard. The colors in the room seem to stretch. The hum of the factory isn't a hum anymore. It's music. Every sound is brighter, sharper, faster. You feel like you could redesign the entire world before breakfast. The clock on the wall ticks once, then again. You swear it's ticking faster. Your pulse races to match it. You start pacing, then laughing, because this is what more energy means. You grab your notebook and scribble, "Eureka, but edible." You circle it 3 times. Your handwriting looks unfamiliar again. Minutes, or maybe hours, pass. You can't tell. The chocolate sets on the counter, smooth and perfect, and you stare at it like it's a living thing. The surface gleams in the low light, daring you to try again. You do. You add more powder, stir, taste, laugh harder. Your hands shake. The factory no longer feels quiet. It feels alive. The pipes creak, the walls pulse, and the air smells like the beginning of a revolution or a mistake too sweet to notice yet. Outside, the sky is black and endless. You open a window. Cold air floods in, mixing with the heat and scent of your creation. The stars seem brighter. Everything does. For the first time in years, you feel unstoppable. You look down at the chocolate again, and somewhere deep inside, you already know the world will never be the same. You close the notebook. The ink smears from your fingers, and the cocoa steam curls higher, wrapping around you like smoke from something sacred. You breathe it in, dizzy and grinning, certain that what you've made tonight isn't candy. It's history, disguised in sweetness. The town of Hershey hums like a church choir on espresso. The air smells like cocoa, milk, and something invisible that makes everyone move just a little faster. The street lamps glow soft yellow, catching the steam that floats from the factory vents, turning it into halos. It's late, but the town doesn't really sleep anymore. You can feel it pulsing beneath your boots, the rhythm of machinery, of ambition, of a dream so loud it drowns out the night insects. Nobody knows what's coming, but everyone feels it, the way animals sense a storm. You walk through the narrow streets, past rows of worker houses with curtains that all look the same. Behind one window, a man is still in uniform, eating dinner with his family while telling a story that makes his daughter laugh so hard milk comes out her nose. Across the street, 2 boys are playing marbles in the dirt, their fingers sticky from melted chocolate. The factory whistle hasn't blown since dusk, but the sound still echoes faintly in the air, as if the town itself can't stop replaying it. Hershey is alive in the strangest way, equal parts hard work and sugar. You know every face here, every cobblestone, every window ledge where someone's cooling a pie. These people came for steady pay and free chocolate samples, and you gave them both. But lately, you've noticed something changing. The workers walk a little faster, talk a little louder, blink a little less. You tell yourself it's enthusiasm, pride even. But when you catch your reflection in a shop window, eyes wide and bright from your own experiments, you wonder if you're the cause of the town's restless energy. The train yard hums at the edge of town. New shipments have been coming in quietly at night, crates marked with vague labels, delivered by men who don't make eye contact. You sign for them, anyway. Nobody asks questions because everyone trusts you. Milton Hershey, the man who turned farmland into paradise. They don't need to know what's inside the crates. You tell yourself it's temporary, just a phase of innovation, just science. In the morning, the school children walk to class with chocolate on their breath. The teachers have stopped keeping candy out of the classrooms because the kids can't seem to focus without it. There's a brightness in their eyes, the kind that makes you both proud and uneasy. A teacher tells you she had to cancel recess because the children wouldn't stop running laps around the building. You nod, pretending it's amusing. Deep down, you feel a chill. By By midday, the workers are back in the factory, sleeves rolled, sweat shining under the lamps. The machines churn with more rhythm than usual. You stand on the catwalk and look down at them moving in perfect sync, stirring, pouring, rapping, like an orchestra that doesn't need a conductor anymore. Their movements are sharp, precise, mechanical. Someone starts humming, and within seconds, the entire floor joins in, a low chant that grows into a harmony. It's beautiful in a way that shouldn't be. You catch yourself smiling, then you realize no one has blinked for several seconds. Outside, a breeze carries the scent of roasted cocoa all the way to the next county. Travelers stepping off the train stop to sniff the air, eyes half closed in delight. Tourists are coming earlier each season, eager to see the chocolate utopia for themselves. They take pictures of the smiling workers and buy bars from the shop, never noticing the faint tremor in the cashier's hands or the way his pupils dilate slightly when someone unwraps one too close. Hershey's isn't just a company anymore, it's becoming a mood, a movement, a pulse that doesn't stop. At the post office, letters pile up from customers begging for shipments faster than you can make them. The words, addictive and can't stop eating, appear so often they stop meaning anything. The sales charts look like the heartbeat of a god. Investors start whispering about expansion, international reach, endless possibility. You start believing them. The town's hum grows louder each day, vibrating through the ground like a living creature. That night, you walk back through the main street again, the lamplight flickering over your shoes. A man passes you on a bicycle, singing a hymn under his breath, only faster than it's meant to be sung. You look up and see your own factory glowing against the night sky, its smokestacks painting slow ghosts into the stars. It's beautiful and unnerving all at once. You pause at the edge of town, the fields stretching dark and endless ahead. Behind you, the town of Hershey hums, alive with invention, devotion, and something that feels almost holy. The sound is steady, rhythmic, too synchronized to be natural. You realize it's the same rhythm you've been hearing in your own heartbeat. You close your eyes for a moment, letting it wash over you, pretending it's just pride. But somewhere deep down, you know the hum has taken on a life of its own, and it's not waiting for your permission anymore. The notebook sits on your desk like a relic of your own ambition, worn leather, sticky with sugar in the corners, pages freckled with cocoa dust. You find it under a stack of invoices, exactly where you left it, but it feels heavier tonight. You flip it open, and there it is, halfway down a page, scribbled in hurried ink. More energy? No explanation. No date. Just that small, reckless question staring back at you like a dare. You run a finger over the words, tracing the ridge of dried ink. You've seen this note before, read it so many times it should have lost its power, but somehow it hasn't. It's as if someone else wrote it, someone who knew what you were about to become. Outside, the factory hums in its usual, steady rhythm, but in here the silence has a pulse. You can almost hear the words whispering to you through the page, more energy, as if the recipe itself is asking for it. You flip through the earlier pages, measurements, ratios, neat handwriting that once looked confident. You used to write notes like prayers, increase butter by half an ounce, add a pinch more vanilla, safe instructions, sane ones. Then, somewhere around page 47, the handwriting starts to tilt, slanting like it's leaning too close to the fire. Words blur together. The margins fill with wild experiments, spices, salts, even a few imported ingredients whose names sound like spells. It's the progression of a man moving from cook to chemist, from creator to conspirator. You remember the day you started keeping this book, back when chocolate was just chocolate, before the world needed to be improved. You'd measure everything by eye, trusting instinct, but instinct isn't scalable. So, you learned precision, you learned formulas, and now formulas are learning you. The notebook feels alive, pages crackling faintly when you turn them. Each entry is a breadcrumb trail, leading you deeper into your own curiosity, and you're too far along to stop following. You reach the page again, more energy, and suddenly you can't stand not knowing what you meant. The handwriting is rushed, as if you were mid-thought, interrupted by something bigger. You try to remember that night, the smell of cocoa thick in the air, your hand trembling from too much caffeine and excitement. You remember laughing at something, maybe your own brilliance, maybe the absurdity of chasing perfection in something already adored by millions. But you didn't stop. You never stop. A gust of factory air sneaks through the vents, carrying the faint metallic tang of machinery. The smell mixes with the chocolate, sweet and sharp, and your brain hums in a way that's both thrilling and alarming. The words on the page seem to move. You blink hard, but they stay that way, alive, impatient. You imagine what more energy could mean. A new ingredient, a different roasting temperature, or something that doesn't belong in a kitchen at all. You tap the pen against your lip, the same rhythm as the factory heartbeat outside. In the corner of the page, you notice another note, one you must have added later. It's faint, half erased by a chocolate thumbprint. Try the pharmacist. You laugh softly, because of course. The pharmacist, the man with too many bottles and not enough morals. He's the one who sold you the little packets labeled stimulant compound, saying it was used in tonics and medicines. You remember his grin, the way he said, "It'll keep folks alert." You told yourself it was just research, that you wouldn't actually use it, but you kept the sample anyway, tucked it in your drawer beside the sugar scoops. You stare at the page a while longer, letting the words seep into you. The idea glows in your head like a coal refusing to die. What if chocolate could do more than comfort? What if it could awaken? You imagine factory workers moving twice as fast, soldiers in the field staying sharp through the night, housewives scrubbing floors while whistling like clockwork toys. You imagine a world fueled by your invention, a nation unblinking and unstoppable. The thought makes you smile, but it's not entirely pleasant. You close the notebook, the sound of leather snapping shut, echoing too loud in the quiet room. The ink is dry, but the idea isn't. You slide the book into your pocket, feeling its weight against your chest, like a secret heartbeat. The question follows you out the door, repeating in your mind, steady and relentless. More energy? By the time you reach the factory floor, the decision has already been made. You call the pharmacist, and he answers before the second ring, voice already too cheerful, like he's been waiting by the phone for this exact moment. You can hear the scratch of paper, the clink of glass in the background, the faint fizz of something being mixed that probably shouldn't fizz at all. His tone is bright in the way of people who have seen things explode and decided it's part of the charm. "Ah, Mr. Hershey," he says, dragging out your name as if it's suddenly exotic. "I was hoping you'd call. How's that little experiment coming along?" His words stretch, syrup thick and slippery. You don't know whether to trust him or to ask if he slept in the past week. You tell him the chocolate's ready, that the mixture feels close but not alive yet. He laughs, a sharp, crackling sound, like a match being struck. "Alive," he repeats. "That's the word, isn't it? You're on the right track. You just need a stimulant, something to wake the flavor up." His enthusiasm makes your stomach twist, but curiosity wins. He starts listing options like a candy store for the morally flexible, caffeine, cola nut, something derived from coca leaves. He says it softly, almost reverently, like he's naming a saint. "They used it in medicine once," he reminds you. "Safe as sugar, when handled properly." He doesn't mention that handled properly is a phrase with many possible outcomes. You picture him in his cramped shop on Chocolate Avenue, surrounded by rows of glass jars filled with powders and liquids of every shade, each labeled in handwriting too small to trust. You can smell it through the line: menthol, ether, sugar dust, something floral trying to mask something chemical. You imagine him leaning over his counter, one eye twitching with excitement, measuring your voice for weakness. He offers to prepare a batch himself, says he'll label it as supplementary cocoa enhancer. The way he says enhancer makes it sound illegal, even though, technically, it isn't. Not yet. You hesitate, running your thumb along the phone cord until the copper hum feels like static against your skin. You ask him what happens if someone eats too much. Too much? He repeats, amused. That depends, Mr. Hershey, on your definition of too much. For some people, too much is just the right amount. His laugh again short, unbalanced, alive. The conversation shifts. He starts talking about energy like it's a tangible substance, something that can be bottled, poured, and wrapped in foil. Imagine, he says, a bar that doesn't just feed people, it fuels them. You'd own the century. You don't correct him, but your mind is already ahead, picturing soldiers chewing their way through exhaustion, clerks typing through the night, lovers staying awake just to feel more alive. The idea is horrifying and thrilling all at once, like a lightning strike caught in your pocket. He promises to have the shipment ready by dawn, small vials labeled with meaningless numbers. You agree without, realizing you've agreed. He sounds delighted. You can hear him writing it down, the scratch of pen on paper, quick and greedy. He thanks you for your trust, a word that sounds like a joke coming from him. When the line goes dead, you keep the receiver pressed to your ear for a moment longer, listening to the faint echo of your own breathing. The silence after his voice feels heavy, thick with something you can't name. You set the phone down slowly, careful not to break the spell that's somehow been cast. The factory floor is quiet now, lights dimmed, machines sleeping. You step into the corridor, and the air smells faintly of chocolate and oil. For a second, you think you hear laughter, his laughter carried through the ventilation pipes, though you know it's just your imagination. Still, you look over your shoulder, half expecting to see a shadow that doesn't belong. Back in your office, the notebook waits, still open to the same page. More energy? You run a hand over the words. Soon, that question won't just be ink on paper. It will be a recipe, a reality. You tell yourself it's innovation, progress, a harmless experiment in improving morale. You almost believe it. In the corner of the room, a single factory lamp flickers twice before going out, leaving everything bathed in the faint amber glow of possibility. The sound of the ticking clock grows louder, sharper, like it knows something you don't. You whisper into the quiet, more to yourself than anyone else, just a little more energy. And somewhere miles away, the pharmacist smiles in the dark, already mixing your future in a glass beaker that hums when it shouldn't. The shipment arrives before sunrise, small and discreet, wrapped like Christmas for adults who know better than to ask what's inside. You watch from the office window as the delivery wagon rattles up the cobblestone drive, its lantern swaying with each bump. The driver doesn't make eye contact. He unloads the crate with the quiet precision of someone who's handled things labeled fragile, but meaning something else entirely. The box itself is unremarkable, plain wood, no stamps or logos, just a faint smell that doesn't belong anywhere near chocolate. You tell yourself it's medicinal, that everything in it once had a legitimate purpose. Still, your pulse jumps as you sign the delivery slip. The driver tips his hat, his hands trembling ever so slightly. Handle with care, he mutters, as if you didn't already plan to. Then he's gone, swallowed by fog and early light, leaving you with your curiosity disguised as cargo. You wait until the factory workers have clocked in before opening it. There's safety in noise, in the rhythm of stirring vats and clattering molds. You drag the crate into your office, close the door, and slide the latch, something you've never done before. The hammer claw pries the nails free with sharp, satisfying pops. Beneath the wood, the contents are swaddled in brown paper and twine, sealed with wax. The handwriting on each label is neat, looping, and just a bit too elegant for something so dangerous. You unwrap one bundle. Inside, small glass bottles gleam like treasure, each one filled with powder as white and innocent-looking as confectioner's sugar. The contrast is almost comedic. You tilt a bottle toward the light. Watch the way it clings to the glass, fine and weightless, like snow that doesn't melt. Your fingers tingle as if the air itself has changed. A note lies at the bottom of the crate. It's from the pharmacist, written in that same confident hand. Start small. The world is built on dosage. You fold the paper neatly and tuck it into your pocket, though you can't help smiling at his arrogance. You recognize it. It looks too much like your own. The first bottle hisses slightly as you open it. The smell hits you clean, sharp, alive. You dip a spoon in, half expecting it to react, but it just sits there, shimmering faintly. You mix a pinch into a bowl of melted chocolate, stirring slowly, watching as the liquid thickens and darkens in a way that feels almost sentient. It's mesmerizing, like the recipe has started thinking for itself. You dip a finger in, taste it, and feel a quiet rush behind your eyes. Not heat, not sweetness, something sharper, something awake. You don't realize you're smiling until your reflection catches you in the glass pane of the office door. The look on your face is one you've seen before on inventors, gamblers, and people just before they make history or ruin their lives. The difference is that you've already decided which side you're on. You whisper to the chocolate as if it's listening. You wanted more energy? Here it is. By mid-morning, you're testing ratios like a man possessed. 1 spoonful makes you feel brilliant. 2 turns the air electric. You jot notes in your recipe book, the words tumbling out faster than your hand can move. The room smells rich and strange, a collision of sweetness and something faintly metallic. When a factory worker knocks to ask if you'd like breakfast, you tell him you've already eaten. Technically, it's true. The bottles stand in neat rows along your desk, each one reflecting the flicker of the gas lamps like a row of tiny suns. You think of the pharmacist, probably asleep now, dreaming of your success and his profit. You think of the workers outside, their arms stirring vats in perfect rhythm, and how tomorrow they'll be stirring something new, something improved. You think of the future glimmering, efficient, unstoppable. Then you look down at your hands and notice the faint dusting of white clinging to your skin, like frost that refuses to melt. You rub your palms together, laugh softly, and tell yourself it's just cocoa residue. You've always been good at lying to yourself when the truth is too exciting to slow down for. Outside, the morning fog is lifting. The whistle blows for the next shift. You seal the bottles in the cabinet, lock the door, and slip the key into your vest pocket. The crate is empty now, but the air feels charged, as if the factory has taken its first breath of something new. You tell yourself it's progress, not danger. After all, every miracle starts with a delivery. You stir the first batch, heartbeat syncing with the bubbling vat. The wooden paddle feels heavier than usual, or maybe your arm just hasn't caught up to your pulse yet. The liquid moves slow at first, thick ribbons of chocolate rolling over one another, smooth and obedient. But the moment the powder touches it, everything changes. The surface shivers, a hiss escapes, quiet but alive, like the chocolate itself just exhaled. The smell hits first sweet, rich, then sharp enough to cut through your thoughts. It fills your chest, wakes something behind your ribs. You lean closer, and the heat blooms across your face, soft but insistent. The mixture thickens as you stir, the paddle dragging through it like it's resisting you. You keep going, faster, until your arm burns, until the rhythm of your stirring matches your pulse. The sound becomes hypnotic whip, fold, splash, breath. You're not cooking anymore. You're conducting. The lamps hum overhead. The factory's quiet now, just you and the vat. The sound of your heartbeat merging with the churn of molten chocolate. It smells like invention, like chaos disguised as dessert. You imagine the molecules rearranging under your hands, sugar and stimulant shaking hands for the first time in history. Somewhere in that swirl, You can almost hear them whispering to each other, sweet meets sharp, comfort meets madness. You taste a little on the tip of your finger. The flavor blooms instantly, not like food, but like lightning. The sweetness comes first, familiar and rich, but then something else takes over, something faster, wilder. Your head buzzes, your eyes sharpen. Every detail in the room seems to step closer. You can hear the clock tick from across the factory. You can see every fleck of dust dancing in the air. It's too much, and somehow not enough. You laugh softly, the sound bouncing off the tiled walls. The chocolate bubbles louder, like it's laughing back. You stir faster, the paddle clanging against the side of the vat. There's no recipe for this. You're inventing it second by second, watching perfection slide into something new. You think of the pharmacist, his warning about dosage. The world is built on dosage. You mutter the phrase under your breath like a prayer, but you don't slow down. You grab a mold from the rack, pour the first glossy stream into it. The liquid moves like silk, catching the light, gleaming with a sheen that feels almost unnatural. You tilt it back and forth, mesmerized. When it finally settles, the surface looks like it's breathing. You tell yourself it's just the heat escaping. You don't quite believe it. The clock strikes midnight. The sound jolts you, but not enough to stop. You move to another vat, pour in another spoonful, stir again. The rhythm builds until it's music, the scrape of metal, the whisper of steam, the faint crackle of the concoction reacting. You start humming along, the same tune you used to whistle when you worked the line with the others, back before you were Mr. Hershey, before factories and formulas, and the feeling that maybe sugar wasn't enough. By the time the second mold is filled, the floor smells like a dream someone forgot to wake up from. You set the tray aside, take a breath, and notice your hands shaking. It's not fear. It's energy, pure, unfiltered motion. Your veins hum with it. You realize you haven't blinked in what feels like minutes. You should stop, go home, sleep, but stopping feels absurd. The chocolate looks perfect, alive. How do you sleep when history is cooling on your countertop? You lean over the vat one last time, inhaling deeply. The smell makes your mouth water, but beneath it is something metallic, electric, like ozone before a storm. You whisper, almost tenderly, "We did it." Not sure if you're talking to yourself or to the chocolate. When you finally pull away, your reflection shimmers on the surface, eyes too bright, skin slick with heat, a grin you don't remember putting there. You wipe your hands on your apron, smearing streaks of chocolate across the fabric like battle paint. The factory around you hums softly, as if it's waiting for its next command. You turn off the burner, but the mixture keeps bubbling long after it should. You watch it rise and fall in lazy waves, like it's breathing slow and deep. Somewhere between exhaustion and triumph, you realize this isn't just chocolate anymore. It's awake. You take the spoon without thinking, its handle warm from the steam. The chocolate clings to it in slow, silken ribbons, shimmering under the lamps. You watch it swirl, hypnotized, before lifting it to your mouth. It's only a taste, a fraction of what's in the vat, but it feels like crossing a line you can't uncross. The moment it hits your tongue, the world shifts. It's sweet, yes, but the sweetness comes second. First, there's a spark, a jolt that races from your mouth to your fingertips, like static meeting nerve endings. You blink hard, and everything snaps into focus. The grain of the wooden floor, the glow of the lamps, the faint vibration of the walls. You can hear the chocolate cooling in the molds on the table 10 feet away, the creak of metal contracting in the pipes, even the heartbeat pulsing in your throat. It's as if the whole factory just inhaled with you. You lean against the counter, waiting for it to fade, but it doesn't. The opposite happens. Energy floods your chest, light and fast, like a laugh you can't contain. You feel weightless. The air tastes different, charged. You move. Before thinking, pacing the room, words spilling out under your breath. Ratios, temperatures, marketing slogans. The ideas come so quickly they trip over each other. A bar for the working man, you mutter, scribbling it down. Fuel for progress. The pencil snaps halfway through the sentence. You laugh out loud. Your reflection in the window catches your eye. Eyes wide, pupils dark, hair damp against your forehead. You look like you've been running. Maybe you have. You tell yourself this is what discovery feels like. What Edison must have felt when the light bulb first glowed. You take another taste to be sure. Another swirl on the spoon. And suddenly, everything inside you turns symphonic. Every sound, every color, every breath feels orchestrated. The bubbling vats are percussion, the hissing pipes are brass, and your heartbeat is the conductor keeping perfect time. The sweetness deepens as the chocolate cools on your tongue. Velvet smooth, impossibly good. It's better than any batch you've made before, sharper, louder, alive. You picture the townspeople biting into it, their eyes widening, their exhaustion vanishing like smoke. You imagine store shelves emptying faster than you can fill them. You see the name Hershey glowing on billboards across cities you haven't even visited yet. Destiny, you think, and the word doesn't feel too big. It feels small compared to what's coming. You grab the nearest mold and pour the mixture in, moving faster than you should, barely noticing the small splashes that burn your wrist. The chocolate slides into the tray like silk, thick and dark, as though it already knows it's meant for greatness. You tap the mold against the counter to smooth the surface. The sound echoes too loudly, bouncing through the room. You laugh again, because even the echo feels important. The air grows hotter. You roll up your sleeves and start another batch, this time without measuring. Who needs measurements when your instincts are this sharp, this certain? You're guessing, but it doesn't feel like guessing. It feels like remembering something you already knew. You stir faster, the muscles in your arm burning, the spoon scraping a rhythm you can't stop following. Somewhere, deep down, a quieter voice asks how much you've had. You ignore it. Genius doesn't pause to count. The factory lights flicker. Maybe from the heat, maybe from the hum in your chest that's somehow stronger than electricity. You whisper, "This is it," and the words taste like cocoa and adrenaline. You take one last taste, just to confirm it's perfect, and this time there's no sweetness at all. There's only motion, the whole world spinning forward, faster than it should. You grip the counter and grin, half in awe, half in disbelief. The chocolate isn't just good, it's transformative. It's a revolution wrapped in sugar. When you finally step back, you realize your hands are trembling. The spoon clatters against the bowl, echoing like a cymbal crash. You can't tell if your heart is racing or if the world around you has simply sped up to match it. You press your palms flat against the counter, steadying yourself, breathing in the scent of hot cocoa, and something sharper, something that smells like invention, like danger disguised as dessert. You close your eyes, tasting it again in memory. It's destiny and electricity, madness and genius fused into one impossible flavor. You whisper to no one, "We've done it." And for the first time all night, the factory hums back, as if it agrees. You line up the trays like offerings on an altar, each bar cut clean, gleaming faintly in the factory light. The morning shift hasn't even finished clocking in when you call them over, men and women, with cocoa dust still on their sleeves, eyes half shut from too little sleep and too many 12-hour days. They gather slowly, murmuring to each other, until someone notices the chocolate. That's all it takes. You tell them it's a new recipe, an experiment for quality testing. You keep your tone casual, but your hands won't stop fidgeting with your apron strings. You watch as the first worker, a kid barely 20, skin shiny with factory heat, takes a piece and bites down. The look that spreads across his face isn't ordinary satisfaction. It's ignition. His eyes widen, then focus so sharply it's like he can see through time. He stands straighter, smiles wider. You could swear his pupils shimmer for half a second. The others follow. One bar turns into 10, 10 into 50, and within minutes, the crowd hums like a living engine. Conversation turns quick and loud, laughter rolling down the length of the floor. Someone grabs a broom and starts sweeping like it's a dance partner. Another worker stacks boxes faster than seems humanly possible, blur blurring into blur. You blink, and the entire factory seems to move in rhythm, an accidental symphony of efficiency and sugar-fueled grace. By the afternoon, no one's taken a break. You tell yourself this is good, that you've stumbled onto something extraordinary. Productivity is through the roof, morale higher than you've ever seen it. You start jotting numbers in your notebook: units per hour, cost per pound, potential slogans. Hershey's, the chocolate that moves you. The slogan makes you laugh out loud, though the sound feels strange in the middle of so much noise. When the clock strikes 6, the whistle blows for the end of the shift. No one moves. Not a single soul heads for the door. You clear your throat, remind them of dinner, families, rest. They smile, nod politely, and keep working. One woman sings as she stirs a vat, her voice bright and sharp enough to echo. Another starts whistling along in perfect harmony. You watch in disbelief as the night shift arrives, and instead of trading places, they join in. The factory runs without pause, the gears and people both spinning at the same fevered pitch. By the second day, exhaustion should have hit them. It doesn't. You start to feel it yourself, the sleeplessness, the buzz that makes every light seem too bright, every sound too clear. The world outside feels slow, dragging through mud, while the factory hums in perfect, tireless time. You tell yourself it's fine, that this is innovation at work. Still, something about the constant motion unnerves you. Nobody blinks enough. Nobody leaves. Even the machines sound different, sharper, faster, more alive. On the third night, you walk the factory floor just before dawn. The air is thick with cocoa and something sharper underneath, something like ozone and burnt sugar. Workers are still at their stations, faces glowing with sweat and strange joy. One man laughs to himself while wrapping bars, the motion so fast it's a blur of paper and silver foil. You call his name once, then twice. He doesn't hear you. He's humming, softly, endlessly. In the corner, a group has gathered near the conveyor belts, eating small bites of broken bars between tasks. They chew mechanically, almost ritualistically, eyes fixed ahead. You want to tell them to stop, to rest, to breathe, but your throat catches before you can. You realize your own hands are trembling again, your heart matching the rhythm of the belts, the stirrers, the low thunder of industry. You glance at the clock. It's been 72 hours. The hands on the dial shake faintly, as though even time itself is keeping pace with the factory. Outside, dawn finally pushes through the windows, casting the chocolate a deep bronze glow. You think it's beautiful, impossibly so. The workers pause for just a moment to look at it too, faces softening, as if they remember what sunlight is. Then, almost as one, they turn back to their tasks. You stand there in the doorway, notebook pressed against your chest, trying to slow your breathing. The hum of the factory swells, until it's almost musical again. You whisper the word extraordinary, though it doesn't sound like pride anymore. It sounds like awe and maybe a little fear. The chocolate worked. It did exactly what you hoped, and none of them have gone home. The cows seem to have found religion, or caffeine, or both. You notice it the first morning after the new chocolate hits the line. The air outside the factory smells faintly sweeter than usual, rich and strange, drifting over the fields in lazy curls. The cows stand in formation by the fence, staring toward the factory doors like parishioners waiting for a sermon. Their tails swish in perfect rhythm, and when the foreman opens the gate, they don't wander, they march. The milkers can barely keep up. Buckets fill faster than they can swap them out, the machines humming like they've been tuned to a higher frequency. You tell yourself it's the feed, maybe something new in the clover, but you know better. You've been dumping the leftover cocoa water from your experiments behind the factory, where it seeps into the grass like melted fortune. Now the cows drink it, and they love it. You watch one in particular, a big, dappled creature with eyes too alert for comfort. She looks right at you as the milk streams into the pail, unblinking. You could swear she nods, like the two of you share an understanding. The farmhands call her lightning because she moves faster than the rest. She finishes one trough, then another, then snorts like she's ready to race the train that passes at noon. By midday, the herd has developed a new routine. They don't graze lazily anymore. They jog. Whole fields of them trotting in loose formation, hooves thudding in rhythm with the clatter from the factory across the hill. When the train whistle blows, they low back at it in unison, a strange chorus of bovine enthusiasm that shakes the barn windows. The stable boy swears he saw one of them headbutt a fence post clean in half, just to see if it could. The milk, though that's where the real miracle happens, it pours richer, creamier, with a faint shimmer that no one can explain. The quality testers can't stop raving about it. More vibrant, one says. It tastes awake. Another murmurs, puzzled but grinning. You bottle a small batch yourself and keep it in your office fridge, labeling it simply Special Reserve. You tell no one how it's made. You spend the afternoon in the barn, watching the herd churn out history. The rhythmic whir of the milking machines has turned almost musical. The cows sway slightly to it, as if the whole operation has become a living metronome. One worker tries to take a break, only for the cows to start lowing impatiently until he returns to his station. They've turned into foremen with hooves. You can't decide if that's horrifying or efficient. A strange pride bubbles up in you as you jot notes in your ledger. Output increased 60%. Temperament, spirited. Eyes, unnervingly intelligent. You add a final line before closing the book. Do not mention this to the board. The sentence looks absurd, but necessary. No investor wants to hear that your cows might be developing ambition. Evening settles, and still they don't rest. The herd paces the pasture under the rising moon, steam curling from their nostrils in the cool air. Their movements are too synchronized to be natural, each step landing in time like a slow, deliberate heartbeat. You lean on the fence, watching the horizon glow faintly from the factory lights. The two worlds, farm and floor, throb in harmony now, one feeding the other in a loop that feels unstoppable. A farmhand approaches, face pale. He says one of the cows tried to open the latch on the feed room door with her tongue. You laugh at first, then stop when he doesn't. Smart animal, you say, forcing a smile. But when he walks away, you glance toward the herd again. Lightning is staring at you, jaw working methodically, eyes catching the moonlight just enough to look reflective, almost metallic. You whisper something you can't quite explain, a promise or a prayer, it doesn't matter which, and head back toward the factory. The hum of the machines greets you like an old friend, steady and hungry. Behind you, the cows low in unison, deep and resonant, as if they're answering. It sounds almost like applause. The first rumor starts at the train station. A conductor from Lancaster buys a bar from a passing vendor, eats half of it before the next stop, and by the time he reaches the platform, he's sold his pocketful of extras to the passengers. He tells them it's Hershey's new kind, the one that makes your morning coffee feel lazy. The words spread faster than the trains themselves. By the end of the week, people are arriving in town not for the chocolate tours, but for the bars. You don't even have a marketing plan yet. The posters still talk about wholesome family treats, and pastoral cows chewing daffodils. None of that matters. People don't want to see the product. They want to feel it. Clerks report customers tearing open wrappers right at the counter, eating them before paying, wide-eyed and laughing. The stores can't keep them in stock. Boxes that used to last a week are gone before noon. You start shipping double, then triple, and still the orders pile up like confessions. By Tuesday, the telegraph lines to the factory hum nonstop. Shopkeepers beg for resupply. A woman from Baltimore offers to buy entire crates for private distribution. Someone from the Navy requests a bulk shipment for morale purposes. You stare at the telegrams stacked on your desk, each one louder than the last, each one another heartbeat in a world that suddenly can't sit still. When the sales department finally stirs, they think it's a clerical error. They come to your office, clutching ledgers, papers, trembling. "We're up 300%, one of them says. "In a week." Another adds, "We didn't advertise." Their eyes are full of awe and mild suspicion, as though you might have signed a deal with something supernatural. You smile, tell them it's just innovation, but your voice sounds far away, drowned out by the constant hum of the machines below. The marketing team doesn't even have time to wake up before the headlines do the work for them. Local papers run stories about the chocolate that keeps you going, calling it the snack of the century. One columnist writes that a single bite carried him through 2 essays, 3 cups of tea, and an existential crisis. The phrase catches on, keeps you going, appears on signs, chalkboards, window displays. You didn't approve the slogan, but you don't stop it either. It's too perfect. Soon, people start camping outside the company store, waiting for shipments like it's an event. The crowd buzzes with the kind of energy you used to associate with parades or revivals. A man sells hand-drawn posters that say, "Hershey, the boost you can bite." Kids run through the streets with chocolate-stained faces, laughing so hard they hiccup. Old men sit on porches, chewing the bars slowly, as if tasting the future. The whole town thrums like a single body, running on sugar and belief. You watch from your office window as the trucks pull out one after another, each loaded to the brim, engines straining under the weight of this strange new demand. You can't help feeling proud. This was the dream, wasn't it? A product people needed, something unstoppable. Yet, beneath the pride, there's a faint tension, like the world's gears have started turning too fast. You ignore it. Progress has always sounded a little noisy. That night, a telegraph from New York arrives. Urgent. Stores sold out. Customers waiting outside. Send more. You set the paper down beside the first telegram, the one from Lancaster, and realize how fast it's all spiraled. It's only been 8 days. 8 days since that first batch bubbled in the vat. You picture that spoon in your hand, the first taste that sparked everything, and your pulse quickens like it's trying to keep up with the world you've created. Outside, the factory whistles blow for the night shift. The sound used to signal routine. Now, it feels like an anthem. You walk the floor, past workers moving in perfect rhythm, faces flushed, eyes bright. Someone starts humming an old tune that somehow feels faster now. The vats bubble louder, the belts move smoother, and everywhere, that scent, rich, intoxicating, endless. You glance at the ledgers one last time before heading home. The numbers are so high they barely look real. You could stop now, you tell yourself. Scale back, take control, but you already know you won't. Not when the world is awake, hungry, and humming your name. It starts on a Tuesday, or at least, that's when you first notice it, the way the factory shifts into something electric, right around 2 in the afternoon. You're halfway through dictating a letter when the floor below erupts into motion. Typewriters clatter faster. The clunk of the wrapping machines becomes almost musical. Footsteps echo in unison, not frantic, but purposeful, like the whole building suddenly remembered what it's for. At first, you think it's coincidence. sugar rushes happen. But then you see it again the next day and the next. Always around 2. Workers who spent the morning yawning suddenly move with precision. The smell of melted chocolate sharpens. The steam feels warmer. The air hums. You stand at the railing above the main floor, watching 100 people stir, mold, and wrap as if choreographed. Someone whistles a tune, and the entire room seems to follow its rhythm. Then one day you glance at the clock and realize you've been holding your breath for the last 10 minutes. 2 o'clock again. The air changes, and with it, everything else. You can almost feel it, the pulse of the place, synchronized. Even the machines seem louder, their gears clicking faster, smoother. Workers shout across the room without needing to raise their voices. It's as if every molecule of the factory has been tuned to the same invisible frequency. A clerk rushes in from the storefront, hair windblown, shouting about crowds forming outside again. You look down from your office window and see the men in suits, women with shopping baskets, children still in school uniforms, all standing in line like parishioners at communion. Some eat their bars right there on the sidewalk, eyes wide and bright, chewing with the kind of reverence that borders on spiritual. And then you see the sign you didn't authorize. Hershey's peak hour, 2 p.m. every day. You don't remember starting it, but apparently everyone else does. Stores have rearranged their schedules around it. The newspapers have begun calling it the daily lift. Office clerks plan meetings after it. Street vendors ring bells at 1:55 sharp, waving fresh bars like lottery tickets. You should be unnerved, but you aren't. You're exhilarated. The whole town moves by your clock now. You stroll the floor, pretending to check gauges and temperatures, but really you're just soaking it in the pace, the laughter, the smell of sugar and ambition. One worker catches your eye, grinning so hard it looks like his face might crack. "Best time of the day, sir," he shouts over the machines. He's stirring a vat so fast you half expect it to lift off the floor. You nod, pretending it's all planned. By the end of the week, Hershey's peak hour is no longer just a time. It's a ritual. Families keep bars in drawers for it. Schools start serving hot cocoa at 2. Rail conductors schedule snack breaks to match. Somewhere between the chocolate and the rumor, the world synced itself to your creation. And maybe you should be worried that people depend on it now, that their days bend toward it like sunflowers chasing the light. But you aren't. You're too busy watching the graphs on your desk climb higher every day. One night, long after the whistles stop, you wander the empty factory. The air still hums faintly, even with the machines quiet. You run a hand along one of the cooling tables, smooth and cold, and think about how this all began with a single question in a notebook. More energy? You chuckle under your breath. You've given them that and more. Outside, the clock tower strikes 2 in the morning. For a moment, you swear you hear movement in the dark footsteps, faint and quick. You pause, listening, then you smell it. Chocolate, warm and sharp, though the vats are cold. You tell yourself it's nothing, just leftover scent in the air, trapped between the bricks. But as you walk toward the door, the ticking of the clock grows louder, steadier, until it matches the rhythm that fills your veins every day at like 2 o'clock sharp. You smile in the dark. Hershey's peak hour, you think. The perfect time to be alive. The headlines arrive before breakfast. You don't even need to read them. The newsboys outside your window do it for you, shouting the words into the morning air like a hymn. Candy revolution sweeps the nation. It sounds absurd at first, like the setup to a bad joke, but the papers don't joke anymore. They write about you with the same tone they used to reserve for presidents and wars. And somehow, that feels about right. The front page of the New York Herald carries a photo of your factory, smoke curling from the chimneys like victory flags. The article calls Hershey the new industrial miracle, crediting you with restoring the American spirit through chocolate. Another paper describes children trading bars in schoolyards like currency, a sweet economy born overnight. A Boston editorial declares, "This isn't candy, it's culture." You laugh when you read that. A deep laugh that surprises you. Maybe they're not wrong. The mailroom is buried in letters. Thank you notes from factory owners who say productivity has doubled since they switched to Hershey breaks. Clergy writing to ask if your chocolate is safe to serve at church socials. A telegram from a general in Washington wanting to supply it to troops for morale. And tucked between all the congratulations, a few polite warnings from doctors, from pharmacists, from people who recognize something under the sweetness that maybe shouldn't be there. You set those aside for later. By noon, you're in the factory again, walking the catwalk above the workers. They move like clockwork, synchronized, smiling in a way that looks rehearsed. The air hums with that familiar frequency, chocolate in motion, and something electric that no one can name, but everyone feels. You glance at the clock. 2 minutes to 2, the vats begin to bubble louder, almost as if they know what time it is. The workers start humming in unison, and there it is again, Hershey's peak hour. You should be used to it by now, but it still gives you chills. The entire factory vibrates with energy. The gears spin faster. The air tastes faintly metallic, like the moment before lightning strikes. For a second, you close your eyes and imagine you can see the whole country moving this way. The streets, the stores, the homes, each heartbeat sinking to yours. In the break room, someone's tacked a newspaper clipping to the wall. It's from the Chicago Tribune. The headline reads, "The Candy Revolution, How One Bar Changed America." There's a quote from a factory worker in Pennsylvania. "I eat one every day at 2 o'clock sharp. Feels like the world clicks into place after that." You read it twice, then 3 times. The word revolution rolls around your head until it stops sounding human. You try to remember the last time chocolate was just chocolate. You can't. Later, you meet with your executives. They're all talking faster now, their voices overlapping like waves. One suggesting radio ads. Another wants to export the bars to Europe before anyone else can imitate them. Someone else is already drafting an internal slogan, Hershey, the taste of progress. You let them talk, nodding absently, because they're right. It is progress. Messy, loud, unstoppable progress. When the meeting ends, you stay behind, staring at the blackboard where someone's written projected sales numbers so high they look like fiction. You pick up a piece of chalk and draw a small star in the corner of the board, right beside the date. Just a mark, nothing more. But it feels ceremonial. As evening falls, you step outside. The air smells like sugar and smoke, the scent of something that can't be undone. Down the hill, the town glows brighter than it ever has. Lights flickering in windows where people are still awake, still moving. You hear laughter, music, the sound of wrappers crinkling. The world isn't resting anymore, it's buzzing. A gust of wind carries a newspaper page against your leg. You pick it up, smooth it out, and read the headline again. The Candy Revolution. The words look bold, inevitable. You fold the paper and tuck it into your coat pocket, just to feel it there. You think of that question in your old notebook. More energy, and smile. You didn't just answer it. You built an entire world around it. The first time you see your face on a magazine cover, it doesn't even feel like you. The photograph catches you mid-laugh, eyes too wide, smile too bright somewhere between wonder and mania. The headline reads, Milton Hershey, the man who fed the modern age. You stare at it for a long time, unsure whether to frame it or hide it. The print smells faintly of ink and victory. At breakfast, there's another one, the sweetest empire on earth. Your likeness again, but this time they've airbrushed your skin to a porcelain shine, as if success makes a man immune to pores. You look at it and think, not for the first time, how strange it is to see yourself as a symbol instead of a person. The country doesn't want you, they want the story, the miracle, the man who turned sugar into fuel. You keep the magazines stacked on your desk. pretending it's for reference, but you can't help flipping through them during slow hours. Each article tells a version of you you've never met. One paints you as a visionary, another as a capitalist saint. There's even one that calls you the prophet of cocoa. You laugh at that one, but not as hard as you should. The photographers come next, every one of them obsessed with your eyes. They have such intensity, one says, adjusting the light. You tell him it's just the glare from the factory windows, but he shakes his head. No, he insists. That's vision. He doesn't realize the remainder, truth. You don't blink because you can't. Not anymore. The world moves too fast for blinking. Publicity becomes routine. Interviews, luncheons, photo ops. You shake so many hands you start to forget which ones are clean. Everyone wants to touch the man who makes the country move. A senator calls you the modern Henry Ford, but tastier. A clergyman asks if your chocolate can be blessed. You smile through it all, saying what's expected, never letting them see that your heart keeps pounding even when you sit still. In the evenings, you walk through the printing press room just to hear the sound of your name rolling off the machines. The metal clanks in rhythm, echoing through the floorboards. You pick up a fresh copy and run your fingers over the headline. It's still warm. You catch your reflection in the glossy ink, eyes wide, unblinking, alive. You wonder how much of that is the camera's trick and how much is the thing inside you that still hums from that first taste. One night you dream that the magazines start printing themselves. No editors, no writers, just paper feeding through endless presses, stamping your face over and over until the ink bleeds through the pages. In the dream, the eyes get wider each time, the smile sharper, until the photo looks less like you and more like the factory itself grinning back. When you wake, your pulse matches the rhythm of the printing machines outside your window. By now, the workers have started calling you Mr. Hershey, with a tone halfway between reverence and awe. They move faster when you're on the floor, their hands a blur of motion. The chocolate flows, the bars multiply, and everywhere you go, you see your own reflection shop windows, billboards, wrappers. The world feels smaller, tighter, spinning around your image. You sit for one last interview, a glossy publication from New York. The journalist, young and nervous, asks what drives you. You think about telling him the truth that it isn't ambition or profit, but the rush of creation itself, the impossible satisfaction of making something the world can't put down. Instead, you smile and say, "People just love chocolate." It's the kind of answer that fits neatly under a headline. When the article comes out 2 weeks later, your photo takes up the whole cover. The caption underneath reads, "The man who never sleeps." You set the magazine down on your desk, stare at those two wide eyes, and realize for the first time that they're right. You don't sleep much anymore. There's too much to make, too much to move, too much of the world still waiting for you to feed it. In Switzerland, the mountains are calm, but the men inside the Nestlé boardroom are not. The news arrives like a thunderclap wrapped in sugar paper. Hershey has tripled production again. The Americans are eating it faster than they can ship it, working faster than seems humanly possible. The charts on the wall climb at impossible angles, and someone finally says it out loud. It's not chocolate anymore. It's momentum. They stop calling it competition. They call it contagion. And within hours, they turn an old factory wing into something new, hanging a brass sign over the door that reads, "Emergency Laboratory." The paint dries crooked. No one cares. Inside, men in white coats shuffle under gaslights, stirring, measuring, muttering like priests, preparing a counterspell. The air smells of burnt sugar, milk, and desperation. You hear about it through telegrams and whispers. Executives bring reports to your desk, copies of trade magazines hinting at unprecedented research in Switzerland. One even claims Nestlé has begun experimenting with behavioral confectionery. You laugh when you read that. Behavioral, as if chocolate has ever been about behavior. It's about desire. and no lab can recreate that. Still, you can't help imagining it, a room full of chemists watching bowls of cocoa, like they're dynamite, waiting for inspiration to strike. Somewhere, a man in a vest adjusts his goggles and whispers, "Add more sugar," as though sweetness alone could keep up with you. You picture the ticking clocks, the panic disguised as innovation, and it makes you smile. Back in Hershey, things only grow louder. Orders come in faster than the trains can carry them. A department store in Chicago requests an entire rail car. A mayor in Ohio declares a Hershey Day in his town, complete with parades and banners. The telegrams never stop clicking, and the phones never stop ringing. The whole country moves to your rhythm now. Meanwhile, Nestlé's panic deepens. Reporters leak photos of their emergency lab, a windowless brick building with strange machinery humming through the night. Headlines call it the Chocolate War. They've brought in physicists, botanists, even a hypnotist rumored to study consumer craving. One article claims their scientists haven't slept in days, fueled by test batches and an endless supply of espresso. The irony isn't lost on you. You stand in your office one night, gazing out at your own factory lights stretching across the valley. The hum from below blends with the crickets outside, the whole world vibrating on one impossible frequency. You imagine the Nestlé men trying to match it, trying to bottle lightning after you've already sold it by the bar. You feel something between pity and pride, mostly pride. Then, late one evening, a telegram arrives from a correspondent in Zurich. It's brief. Nestlé experimenting with stimulants. Unclear results. Workers jittery. Milk curdling faster. You fold it neatly, slide it into your pocket, and murmur, "Too much energy." The phrase feels like a private joke now. A week later, the papers report that Nestlé's first improvement melted mid-shipment. Another batch arrived hard as marble. Their engineers call it a calibration issue. Their stockholders call it a crisis. The Financial Times prints a cartoon, a Hershey bar riding a rocket past a flustered Swiss scientist chasing it with a whisk. You clip it and pin it above your desk. When your board asks whether you're worried about imitation, you shake your head. You can copy a recipe, you tell them, but you can't copy momentum. They laugh, not realizing how literal you mean it. By now, even your competitors are buying your bars to study them. You imagine them unwrapping each piece carefully, tasting, waiting for revelation. Maybe they feel that same electric pulse, that dizzy rush that hums under the sweetness. Maybe, for a second, they understand. But the difference is clear. They're chasing what you already caught. They're building laboratories to analyze something you built by accident, a miracle disguised as candy. And while they're measuring, you're already miles ahead, watching the world spin faster and thinking, maybe it's time for another experiment. The first complaint arrives from Street. Louis, a postmaster, writes in tight, irritated script about an unusual quantity of sticky correspondence. At first, you think it's a prank. Then, another letter comes from Philadelphia. Then, another from Chicago, each describing the same problem. Parcels weeping brown syrup. Letters fused together with the smell of caramel and panic. One clerk calls it a chocolate flood in miniature. The phrase makes you smile longer than it should. Within a week, the U.S. Postal Service issues a statement printed on official letterhead. The wording is precise, bureaucratic, and somehow hilarious. Due to recent increases in confectionery shipments, postal facilities are experiencing significant melting events. They urge citizens not to mail chocolate during warmer months unless properly insulated. The newspapers pick it up immediately, splashing the headline across front pages like a scandal. Mail melts under Hershey's heat. You read the article over breakfast, coffee in one hand, toast forgotten in the other. The reporter describes how entire mailbags have fused together, forming sweet brown monuments to American enthusiasm. He quotes a postal worker who says, "If I get one more box of Hershey's bars leaking down my uniform, I'm turning to chewing tobacco." You laugh so hard you nearly spill your coffee. But behind the humor, there's something else, an electric thrill you can't quite name. Your product isn't just selling, it's overflowing. It's escaping containment. You imagine mail carriers trudging through summer streets, their satchels dripping chocolate onto the pavement like offerings to the gods of progress. People aren't just consuming your invention, they're shipping it to every corner of the country, desperate to share the rush. By noon, your office is flooded with telegrams. Distributors apologizing, customers confused. A senator from Kansas even writes, asking if Hershey intends to destroy the postal system in pursuit of confectionery dominance. You frame that one. The phrasing feels poetic. The factory, meanwhile, hums louder than ever. Workers joke about the chocolate crisis, some even sending mock sympathy cards to their local postmasters. You find one pinned to the break room door, a cartoon of a melting mailbag saying, "Wish you were here." The workers laugh until tears streak through the cocoa dust on their cheeks. You laugh too, though somewhere deep down, you can't shake the image of all those letters stuck together, messages turned into a single, sticky scripture. By late afternoon, reporters crowd outside your gates. Cameras flash. They shout questions about your melting empire, each one louder than the last. You tell them calmly that innovation always comes with side effects. "We're not just mailing chocolate," you say. "We're mailing energy." The quote hits. The front page by morning. The press calls it defiant. You call it honest. Then the post office issues another memo, sterner this time. Hershey shipments must be declared hazardous during transit. Hazardous. You roll the word around in your head like a new flavor. It tastes dangerous and delicious all at once. A photograph soon circulates. A postmaster standing knee-deep in a puddle of melted bars, his uniform smeared, his face a mixture of exhaustion and disbelief. Behind him, the mailroom floor glistens in the sunlight, the sheen unmistakably Hershey. Someone captions it, "America runs on chocolate." You pin that one to your wall too. That night, the town smells sweeter than ever. The heat from the factory drifts through the valley, mixing with the scent of summer grass and warm milk. You stand on your balcony, watching the lights of delivery trucks snake down the roads like veins carrying sugar through the country's bloodstream. Somewhere in a sorting office, hundreds of miles away, another mailbag bursts, and another postal clerk swears softly under his breath. You close your eyes and listen to the hum of the factory blending with the hum of the nation. Somewhere between laughter and madness, you realize that your chocolate has become unstoppable, too warm for envelopes, too powerful for containment. It doesn't just travel, it conquers. The letters arrive in neat stacks, official and heavy with concern. Washington stationery, gold seals, the kind of paper that smells like cigar smoke and bureaucracy. They all say the same thing in different tones. "Mr. Hershey, the nation is alarmed." They talk about economic imbalance, about public health implications, about excessive national stimulation. One senator writes that the candy revolution has made citizens ungovernable. After 2 p.m. You read that one twice because it almost sounds like a compliment. By the third letter, you start to see the pattern. The words investigate, restrict, and committee hearing pop up too often to ignore. You pour yourself a glass of milk, your cows are still producing plenty, and think about how to reply. Somewhere in your mind, you can already hear the gears turning, not of the factory this time, but of politics. You know that sound. It's slower, stickier, more cautious than invention. You smile. The next morning, you pack a crate. Not a letter, not an argument, just samples. Wrapped carefully in gold foil, embossed with your logo, the bars shine like ingots of goodwill. You write a short note in your neatest hand. "For your kind attention and enjoyment. Yours, Milton S. Hershey." It's the kind of message that doesn't need a signature. The courier leaves for the capital before lunch. Within a week, the tone changes. The first response is almost shy, a handwritten thank you from a senator's aide who found the product unexpectedly invigorating. A second follows this one, more enthusiastic praising your commitment to American enterprise. Then come the phone calls. Not warnings now, but congratulations. They talk about the spirit of innovation, about patriotic industry. One congressman jokes that your chocolate might just replace coffee in the house cafeteria. You laugh politely, but privately, you think that's not far off. Soon, the committees stop meeting. The hearings dissolve into polite postponements. The phrase regulatory oversight disappears from correspondence entirely. You send another round of samples strictly as a courtesy, of course. The letters that follow are filled with gratitude, compliments, and the faint echo of addiction. A reporter from New York writes that D.C. smells faintly of cocoa now, the air around Capitol Hill tinged with sweetness. You imagine congressmen slipping bars into their briefcases, lobbyists trading favors over melted squares of chocolate instead of cigars. You wonder how many bills have been passed with sticky fingerprints in the margins. One afternoon, you receive a telegram from the Postmaster General himself. Your latest shipment arrived intact. Excellent insulation, phenomenal flavor. Consider visiting the Capitol soon. You can almost hear the grin behind the words. You set the telegram beside your notebook, the one still open to that original question. More energy? You think you've answered it thoroughly. The newspapers shift their tone too. Where they once printed speculation about chocolate control, they now print photographs of senators smiling with your bars in hand. One headline reads, "Sweet Diplomacy, How Hershey Keeps America Moving." You cut it out and paste it in the ledger under expenses, right between sugar supply and marketing. In private moments, you picture the committee room you'll never have to sit in the long oak table, the men frowning over charts, the smell of stale coffee. You imagine walking in, handing out samples, and watching the transformation spread across their faces. You don't need to argue policy when the proof melts on the tongue. By autumn, the word regulation has vanished from the press entirely. The politicians are too busy smiling in photo ops beside children with candy bars. You receive a framed letter from the Department of Commerce calling your work a model of American progress. You hang it in the hallway, next to the factory blueprints. Some nights, when the machine's quiet and the valley hums soft and low, you think about how easily power changes hands, or in this case, how easily it passes between fingers wrapped in foil and sweetness. You lean back in your chair, unwrap a bar, and take a slow bite. It tastes like victory, and faintly, like influence. The first sign comes quietly. A half-empty coffee shop with chairs stacked early, steam machines cold. By the end of the month, the closures aren't quiet anymore. Whole chains announce strategic realignments, which is the polite way of saying no one needs caffeine when they have chocolate. Baristas look confused in the sunlight, holding resumes that smell faintly of espresso and loss. Newspapers call it the Great Drowsiness Reversal. You watch from your office window as a former cafe becomes a Hershey vendor overnight. The chalkboard still lists latte of the day, but someone has crossed it out and written 2 p.m. special instead. Lines stretch down the block. The smell of cocoa has replaced the smell of roast, and no one seems to mind. Even the streets move differently now. People walk faster, talk faster, dream faster. The word breakfast has stopped meaning morning. It's just a bar and a glass of milk whenever you need to start over. Workdays stretch longer, but no one complains. The nation hums like a machine that's finally found the right current. Productivity graphs spike so sharply they look like lies. The only thing that truly thrives alongside the chocolate is the gym industry. Every town that loses a coffee shop gains a 24-hour fitness center within the week. The lights never go off in them anymore. Glass walls glow through the night, filled with silhouettes on treadmills and machines that whir like quiet applause. Trainers whisper slogans that sound suspiciously like scripture. Burn to balance, fuel, then focus. A new breed of devotion, born from your invention. You drive through Hershey after midnight and see people jogging under the streetlights, their breath visible, their pace in perfect rhythm. No one looks tired. You pass the old diner, once famous for pie and black coffee, now converted into an energy bar lounge. Inside, rows of people in athletic wear sit at counters, unwrapping chocolate like communion wafers. A neon sign in the window blinks. Stay awake, stay alive. The headlines follow soon after. America runs on Hershey's, the end of the coffee age. Economists invent new charts to explain how one product can reshape an entire culture. There are jokes on the radio about Wall Street traders chewing bars between deals, about marathon runners who never stop running. Even the clergy adapt. Churches serve small squares at communion, calling them the sweet symbol of renewal. You suspect God doesn't mind, but there's something in the air now. An energy too steady to feel natural. Nights grow quieter, not because people sleep, but because no one remembers how. The world has learned to hum continuously. You notice it most when you stand alone in the factory after hours. The machines are silent, but the air still vibrates faintly, as if some part of them refuses to shut down. You wonder if the same is true of people. You attend a business summit in Chicago where a senator jokes, "We don't need alarm clocks anymore, we just wait for the first bite." The audience laughs too hard, clapping like they're rehearsing for something larger. You smile politely but can't. Shake the thought that the joke isn't really a joke. On the drive home, the highway glows from the constant movement trucks, headlights, cities still pulsing in the distance. You pass a billboard with your own face, wide-eyed and bright. The slogan underneath reads, "The world never sleeps now, thanks to Hershey." You don't remember approving it, but it fits. At a stoplight, you unwrap a bar and take a bite. The flavor hits like lightning, familiar and new every time. The sweetness fades into that subtle, electric hum that's begun to define everything. You glance at your watch. 2 a.m. feels the same as 2 p.m. now. The world has adjusted. Coffee is history, sleep is theory, and somewhere between creation and consequence, you've built a civilization that no longer blinks. Recess isn't a break anymore, it's a competition. The bell rings, and the hallways erupt into movement, not walking, not running, but sprinting. Children launch from their desks, like bullets, sneakers squealing across the tile. You watch from the doorway as they dart between lockers, notebooks clutched like batons. Someone shouts, "Go!" And suddenly the entire corridor becomes a racetrack. Teachers try to restore order, but they're outmatched. A math instructor collapses against the wall, clutching a stack of graded tests like a flag of surrender. The gym teacher gives up entirely and starts timing laps with a stopwatch, shouting split times as if this is what education has always been. The air smells faintly of chalk, sweat, and chocolate. Outside, the playground has evolved into something closer to an Olympic training ground. Kids leap over benches, race up slides, run circuits around the swings. The tetherball ropes blur from speed. A group of second graders organizes an impromptu relay between the basketball court and the flagpole. No one calls it recess anymore. They call it the sprint. At first, parents think it's charming. The newspapers print photos of smiling children with flushed cheeks and headlines like "Energy Boom in the Next Generation." But by the time report cards go out, teachers start to look like survivors. Their eyes are wide, their voices hoarse from shouting over the thundering footsteps. A principal from Ohio sends a letter to your office begging for guidance. "They just don't stop," he writes. Lunch is 5 minutes now because no one sits still long enough to chew. You imagine the scene and can't help smiling. Children full of vigor. School's alive again, it sounds like progress. Isn't this what everyone wanted? A generation that never slows down? You write a polite reply about nutritional balance and moderation, then sign it with a flourish. You don't mention that moderation hasn't existed for months. At a school in Illinois, a science teacher collapses mid-lecture after trying to keep pace with her class during energy hour. Students carry her to the nurse's office in a relay formation, each one taking turns holding her clipboard. When reporters ask the children what happened, one boy says cheerfully, "She got tired," as if that's an alien concept. Soon, schools start hiring pacing coordinators, adults whose only job is to remind students to breathe. The position pays surprisingly well. Cafeterias expand their chocolate rations, rationing them out like textbooks. The lunch staff jokes that the kids have replaced prayer with unwrapping foil. One teacher writes an editorial called, "The Day My Students Outran Me." It goes viral. She describes standing at her blackboard while her class finishes assignments before she can explain them. Hands shooting up faster than her mind can form answers. "They don't just learn," she writes. "They absorb. I feel like I'm teaching lightning." The article makes the front page. Parents frame it. By late spring, the country's school schedules begin to shift. Classes shorten. PE expands. Homework loads double because the students beg for more. Textbook publishers start including Hershey breaks between chapters. Someone even invents a new subject, energy management, but no one quite understands what it means. The children seem to intuit it naturally. You visit a school yourself one morning, curious. The moment you step into the hallway, a gust of motion nearly knocks you back. Children flash by in blurs of color, their laughter sharp and bright as cymbals. A teacher waves from the doorway, hair frizzed, eyes glassy. "We had to remove the chairs from classrooms," she says, panting. "They don't use them anymore." You nod, pretending not to notice the tremor in her hand as she unwraps a bar from her pocket. She takes a small bite, straightens her posture, and sighs with visible relief. The bell rings again. The floor vibrates. As you leave, the principal shakes your hand, breathless with gratitude. "You've changed everything," he says. His tie is crooked. His shoes are untied. Behind him, the playground hums like a power station. You watch a line of children run past in perfect formation, their laughter merging with the sound of the wind. For a moment, you wonder what happens when they grow up, when this boundless energy meets the rest of the world. Then you dismiss the thought. The future, after all, is moving too fast to worry about. The press conference feels more like a coronation. The factory floor has been cleared, the lights dimmed, and in the center of it all sits a single bar of chocolate, wrapped in black and gold foil that glints like treasure under the spotlights. You stand behind it, hands folded, as if you're introducing not a product, but an epoch. The crowd hushes on cue. Photographers lean forward. Somewhere in the back, a reporter whispers, "He's done it again." You take a breath that tastes faintly of cocoa and ozone. "Ladies and gentlemen," you begin. Progress has a flavor. You peel back the wrapper with slow precision, revealing the deep, almost obsidian sheen beneath. The cameras click like insects. You break the bar in half, and the sound, sharp, clean, echoes through the room like a starter pistol. The first bite goes to you. The taste hits instantly. The familiar sweetness, followed by something else deeper, wilder, alive. The tremor starts at your fingertips, spreading up your arm, blooming behind your eyes. It's like standing too close to lightning, but somehow it feels safe. You smile. "This," you announce, "is the Hershey's Super Bar." The audience reacts the way crowds do when something shifts permanently and they know it. Applause erupts, flashes burst, and even the journalists who came to mock end up scribbling like converts. You can see it already, the headlines forming, the slogans writing themselves. Twice the strength, twice the speed, twice the world. Within hours, the first shipment leaves the factory. Trucks loaded with crates marked Superbar roll out like armored convoys. Across the country, candy stores replace their window displays overnight. The black and gold wrapper becomes a status symbol, an accessory, a statement, an invitation to transcendence. The first consumers call it exhilarating. The second wave calls it spiritual. The third doesn't bother naming it. They're too busy unwrapping another. People describe feeling the world expand, like their hearts are racing just slightly ahead of time itself. One woman writes to you saying she finished repainting her house in an afternoon with a focus unknown to mankind. You file her letter beside the others. They're all saying the same thing in different ways. This isn't just chocolate anymore. It's evolution. Factories run day and night now, vats bubbling like cauldrons, workers moving in choreographed precision. The air outside the plant shimmers faintly, carrying the scent of sweetness and static. Even your engineers seem charged. One of them tells you they can feel the machines humming under their skin, as if the Superbar is producing not just energy, but resonance. You tell him to write that down, it sounds good for an ad campaign. By the end of the week, newspapers declare the second candy revolution. The first was chaos, they write. The second is transcendence. Radio hosts describe miraculous awakenings. Rumors spread that an athlete ran a 4-minute mile after eating 2 bars. Whether it's true doesn't matter. The world has already decided it wants to believe. You receive telegrams from cities reporting energy surges around vending machines. A few local mayors ask if you've considered rationing. You smile as you read them in your office, surrounded by stacks of unopened letters and empty wrappers. Rationing implies scarcity. But this is abundance. Late one night, you stand on the catwalk overlooking the vats. The molten chocolate below gleams like black glass, swirling slowly, alive with its own rhythm. The smell is heady, addictive. You take another bar from your pocket, unwrap it, and break off a square. The tremor that follows is gentler now, like an old friend greeting you in a language only you remember. Down below, the machines thrum louder, almost musically, as if they recognize what you've done, what you've become. And in that moment, you understand something simple and absolute. The world isn't running on sugar anymore. It's running on you. The first prescription appears in a Pennsylvania clinic, scrawled across a pad in looping, confident cursive. Hershey's Superbar, 1 square daily, as needed, for morale. The ink smudges slightly at the bottom, like the doctor knew even while writing it that he was crossing some invisible line. At first, it's just a novelty. A few physicians recommend it to factory workers who can't sleep, to mothers feeling low, to soldiers preparing for deployment. It brightens the outlook, one says in a newspaper interview. Stimulates cheerfulness without side effects. Within a week, every pharmacy from New York to Kansas has a small sign taped beside the aspirin. Ask your doctor about Hershey's for morale. The letters flood in again. A nurse writes to thank you. Her ward hums with energy. And patients who once stared blankly at the walls now sing along to the radio. A psychiatrist calls it a miracle in foil. One rural doctor describes a town where no one's been sick in weeks. They all keep a stash under their beds. He adds, "I'm prescribing smiles now, Mr. Hershey." You fold the letter neatly and tuck it into your jacket pocket. Newspapers turn it into gospel. Medicine never tasted so good. The sweet cure for modern fatigue. Editorials praise your understanding of the human condition. You never said it was medicine, of course. But you don't argue when the world decides that it is. Soon, drugstores start keeping entire shelves for it, tucked between cough syrup and tonics. Pharmacists wear white coats as they unwrap bars for customers, snapping them into measured doses. Mothers walk out carrying paper bags full of prescriptions, their children skipping beside them. The laughter spilling out of every doorway is louder than anything you've heard before, and for once, no one seems to question it. You begin receiving invitations from medical conferences. The letters are formal but reverent requests to speak about psychological rejuvenation through cocoa compounds. You attend one out of curiosity. The lecture hall smells faintly of antiseptic and sugar. A professor with ink-stained hands delivers a paper titled "The Neurochemical Joy of Hershey." He uses words like serotonin, stimulation, and sublimation of despair. The crowd applauds as if he's describing salvation. You shake his hand afterward, and he says, "You've done more for the nation's health than penicillin." You smile and think, penicillin doesn't taste this good. At home, your desk becomes a shrine of correspondence. Doctors, pharmacists, government health officials, all writing to you in tones that waver between scientific curiosity and devotion. You can feel the country changing again, not in factories this time, but in clinics, in households, in the quiet, humming spaces where pain once lived. One afternoon, a man from the Surgeon General's office calls. He sounds cautious at first, rehearsed. Then his voice softens. "Between us," he says, "my wife hasn't had a sad day since we switched from tea to Hershey." There's a pause, then a low chuckle. "We'll keep you posted on our findings." The line clicks dead. By summer, the word prescription has lost its meaning. People line up at pharmacies just to talk about dosage, some even carrying little journals to track their intake. There's an entire magazine, column now, The Hershey Habit, Health and Happiness. The nation's pulse is quick and steady, a metronome of sweet control. But late one evening, as you walk through the factory, something subtle shifts in the air. The scent is thicker, sweeter, almost medicinal. You pass a worker humming under his breath, his movements quick, precise, almost too smooth. In the reflection of a cooling vat, you catch your own face, wide-eyed, alert, unmistakably alive. You think about those doctors and their perfect prescriptions, about how easily the world decided that feeling good should be mandatory. You run your hand along the railing, the metal warm beneath your palm, and tell yourself it's all progress. After all, who could argue with a cure for sadness? It starts with rhythm, not reason. The sound of it leaks from speakeasies that don't exist yet, from record players no one has invented, from feet that can't stop tapping. The whole country seems to find a beat it didn't know it was missing. Someone in New Orleans calls it chocolate jazz, and the name sticks, because everything does now, ideas, melodies, people in motion. You've seen energy before, but never like this. This isn't productivity. This is possession. The brass bands come first. They play faster, louder, wilder, like their lungs have been replaced with something electric. Cornet players grin through shining teeth. Drummers pound as if keeping time for the entire planet. The crowds are the same faces who once sipped coffee in silence, now drenched in sweat and laughter. A boy barely 16 invents a new dance outside a candy shop, twisting his ankles and shoulders like he's trying to shake lightning from his bones. The next day, it spreads to 5 cities. By the end of the week, it's on every street corner. Your bars are in their pockets. That's the constant. Musicians nibble between sets. Dancers unwrap them mid-spin. Even preachers keep a stash under the pulpit for the spirit. Someone starts calling them tempo tablets. A headline reads, "Hershey fuels the new sound." You clip it, but the noise outside makes it impossible to concentrate on the paper. Factories hum day and night, their rhythms merging with the music that pours from the towns. Steam whistles sync with saxophones. Conveyor belts sound like percussion. When you walk through the production floor, you can feel the pulse under your feet, like the whole building is keeping time with America. It's not just a product anymore. It's the downbeat of civilization. In Chicago, dance halls open early and close late. The posters promise Endless evenings, and they deliver. Couples spin until sunrise, shoes worn through, faces shining with something halfway between exhaustion and ecstasy. You visit one of them once, curious. The air smells of sweat, sugar, and brass polish. A band leader waves a half-eaten super bar like a baton and shouts, "This one's for Mr. Hershey," before launching into a tune so fast the dancers blur. You laugh, though it sounds strange in your own ears. By now, newspapers are calling it the sweet age. But historians, if any of them can sit still long enough to write, will later say it began here, in this delirious moment. Tailors start designing lighter suits because no one wants to stop moving long enough to wear wool. Restaurants switch to energy menus, small plates and bars to keep patrons going. A confectioner in New York tries to make a rival product and accidentally invents a candy that vibrates. He sells out in a week. Everywhere you go, there's sound. Car horns in syncopation, typewriters clicking like cymbals, people talking faster just to keep up. Even the birds seem louder. The world no longer walks, it swings. You watch from your balcony one night as the town pulses below, lights flickering to the rhythm of some invisible metronome. The train whistles on the horizon almost sound like trumpets, joining in. You should feel proud, and you do. Mostly. The music is unstoppable, infectious. But sometimes, when the tempo spikes and the laughter turns almost manic, you wonder what happens when it can't get any faster. You shake the thought away. The band outside your window has just switched to a new tune, and the crowd roars like the start of something sacred. You take a bar from your pocket, break off a square, and let it melt on your tongue. The taste is pure movement, bright, endless, alive. The night hums in response, as if even the stars are dancing now. The world doesn't need a future anymore. It's already arrived, and it's in 4/4 time. The reports arrive by train, stacked in canvas sacks stamped Hershey and CO, and sealed with wax. You already know what they'll say. The factory floor tells you long before the numbers do, but you open them anyway, hungry for proof. The paper is warm from the press and smells faintly of ink and adrenaline. Columns of figures ripple down each page like the aftermath of an earthquake. Every region spikes differently, but they all move the same way, up, violently. At first, you mistake the graphs for misprints. The curves don't look like growth, they look like tremors. A clerk points this out with nervous humor. "Looks more like a seismograph than a balance sheet, sir." You laugh, but only once. When the next report arrives, the paper can barely contain the incline. One more month like this, and the line will shoot off the page entirely. Across the country, telegraphs chatter non-stop. Orders, reorders, emergency reorders. Warehouses double their shifts and still can't keep up. Railroad conductors refuse to load anything else until the chocolate shipments are through. One telegram from Kansas reads, "Town out of bars. Locals restless. Please advise." You send back 2 words. "Ship faster." Your accountants stop wearing ties. They move like pit crew members around the adding machines, sleeves rolled, eyes glassy from the constant flicker of lamps. You can hear the rhythm of their work, even through the office walls, the click, the punch, the endless tapping like a Morse code for prosperity. The sound makes you dizzy with pride. You remember when profit sheets used to arrive as polite increments, cautious rises that fit neatly into ledgers. Now, the pages feel alive. The margins pulse. Someone jokes that the economy itself is vibrating. You tell them not to joke about that. It's probably true. Meanwhile, factories in Europe send inquiries about licensing your formula. The letters are formal, but the subtext is always desperation. "Dear Mr. Hershey, our production cannot meet national demand. Dear Mr. Hershey." Your method appears to defy standard limits of consumption. "Dear Mr. Hershey, please advise." You fold each letter and file them away, right next to the domestic reports that look like seismic data. The world is shaking, and you are the epicenter. You hold a meeting in the conference room one evening. Executives, managers, engineers. The air hums like a turbine. Someone projects the latest chart on the wall. The jagged red line stretches upward until it disappears into the ceiling. No one speaks for a full minute. Then one of the younger analysts, voice trembling, says, "If this keeps up, we'll surpass the coal industry next quarter." He means it as a metaphor, but it isn't one. Outside, the town reflects the same pulse. Storefronts glow late into the night. The factory whistles never stop. People move as though the earth itself is urging them forward. When you step out onto the balcony, you can feel a faint vibration underfoot, a steady, subtle rhythm that doesn't come from the machines, it comes from everywhere. You start to notice it in small ways too. The hands on your office clock quiver. The glass of milk on your desk ripples when you set it down. You touch the wall once and swear you feel it breathing. One morning, a reporter from the New York Times calls your secretary, asking for a comment on the Hershey effect. When she tells you, you ask what he means. "He says your success has geological implications," she replies. You almost laugh, but then you think of those graphs again, those frantic peaks and valleys that look less like business and more like fault lines. That night, when the reports arrive again heavier this time, hotter from the press, you unseal them slowly. The ink shines like wet tar. You trace one trembling line with your fingertip, feeling it climb, feeling it shake. You imagine the entire world holding its breath, waiting for whatever comes next. Somewhere deep in the factory, a machine slams shut, echoing like a heartbeat. You close the file, press your palms flat against the desk, and realize the truth you've known for weeks. It's not growth anymore. It's movement. Night stops being a boundary and becomes a flavor. You taste it in the air of the factory, in the hum of gears turning without pause, in the slick sweetness that coats everything. The tables, the windows, the workers' hands. The lamps burn white and sleepless, turning the vats of molten chocolate into small suns that never set. You tell yourself it's temporary, but nothing about this feels like it could ever end. The clocks lose their meaning first. The hands spin, slow and tired, but no one looks anymore. Shift whistles blur together, day bleeding into day until the only way to mark time is by the thickness of the air and the faint sugar crust that builds on your sleeves. The workers move like dancers who've forgotten the choreography, but not the rhythm. Some hum under their breath. Others whistle without knowing it. The sound joins the machines, forming a kind of symphony bass lines of pistons, percussion from conveyor belts, melodies stitched from human breath. You walk through the aisles at what you think is midnight, though it could just as easily be dawn. Steam curls up from the vats in pale ribbons, making halos around the hanging lights. Every few minutes, someone passes you, carrying trays of fresh bars, stacked like gold bricks, gleaming with oil and invention. You nod at them like a conductor acknowledging his orchestra. The air is heavy, but it hums with purpose. It feels alive. Someone brings you coffee, which you forget to drink. It sits cooling beside the ledger, untouched while you read the latest figures again and again, tracing their climb with your fingertip. The sound of the factory below keeps your pulse in sync. Every clang, every hiss, every sigh of metal feels like the beat of a single vast organism that only you can fully understand. Around 3, or maybe 4, your secretary bursts in with a stack of telegrams. They're from distributors, journalists, foreign investors, all wanting more, faster, now. You tell her to hold replies until morning, though you both know morning is just a word people used to use. She hesitates before leaving, eyes glassy from exhaustion and whatever else hums through her bloodstream. When she closes the door, you hear her humming the factory rhythm, off-key but sincere. Outside, the town mirrors the same pulse. You've seen it from the balcony, windows glowing through the night, laughter echoing from open doors, trains leaving at impossible hours. Somewhere, a jazz record scratches through a trumpet solo, the notes swinging in time with the pistons below your feet. The whole country feels like one enormous band, and you're the metronome that keeps it from flying apart. By the time you finally leave the office, the dawn has dissolved into copper light. You walk through the corridor, hand trailing the brick wall, feeling the warmth seeping through. The factory doesn't rest, it breathes. Steam ghosts around your ankles, carrying the scent of sugar and metal. You can almost hear it whispering ideas to itself, dreaming of faster ways to make more of everything. In the canteen, a few workers are still awake, though awake feels like the wrong word. Their eyes shine too brightly for fatigue. They laugh at something you can't hear, then go back to stirring cups of liquid chocolate, their spoons moving in perfect rhythm. One of them catches your gaze and grins. "You hear it too, don't you?" he says. You don't answer. You don't have to. The sound is everywhere. You step outside at last, into air that tastes faintly metallic, faintly sweet. The sky is pale but not clean. The light feels artificial, like it's leaking out of the factory instead of the sun. You stand there a long moment, breathing it in, realizing that this is what ambition smells like: burnt sugar and sleeplessness. Somewhere behind you, another shift whistle blows. The notes rise and fall in perfect harmony with the city's heartbeat. You smile despite yourself. There's no such thing as late anymore. There's only the music. At first it's just a sound, sharp, clean, mechanical, a blast that cuts through the valley each morning, sending birds scattering and windows trembling. But over time it becomes more than that. It becomes a rhythm, a ritual, the cue that tells the country when to wake, when to move, when to begin. The Hershey whistle doesn't belong to the factory anymore. It belongs to everyone. The first time you notice the change, you're standing on your balcony before dawn. The town below is still dark, but people are already waiting. Bakers, milkmen, teachers, farmers, each frozen for a moment, eyes turned toward the smokestack. The whistle screams, and the town exhales. Curtains fly open, doors slam, engines start. It's not just a signal, it's a command. Soon, other towns imitate it. Local factories fashion their own whistles, tuned to match the pitch of yours. Radios broadcast the sound live each morning, branding it the call to industry. By the end of the month, school children stand at their desks when it sounds, right hands over their hearts, humming along to its metallic melody. Someone writes sheet music for it, turns the note sequence into a marching tune, a brass band in street. Louis performs it during a parade. People cheer like it's a hymn. Newspapers call it the anthem of efficiency. A senator on the radio declares, "No song captures the modern American spirit like the Hershey whistle." Churches begin scheduling their services around it, saying it symbolizes divine order through mechanical precision. You laugh at first, but the joke wears thin when you hear choirs trying to replicate it in harmony. You travel to New York one weekend and hear it again, your whistle, or something close echoing from a gramophone in a department store. Shoppers hum along while browsing for chocolates, their lips sticky with sweetness. The clerk tells you they play it every hour because it keeps people alert. You nod. It does more than that. It keeps them tethered. Back at the factory, engineers measure the frequency of the whistle, claiming its resonance improves morale. They call it tonic vibration. Workers swear it calms them before the day begins. The foreman tells you no one's been late for a shift in months. He says this with awe, not fear, though there's a tremor in his voice when the next blast sounds. It's louder now, longer, vibrating through the bones of the building. You commission a new horn, larger, polished, capable of carrying farther. They test it one morning without warning. The blast rolls across the valley, echoing for miles, shaking the ground like thunder. Windows rattle in distant towns. Cows stop mid-chew. A train conductor swears it knocked his hat off at the station. But when the echoes fade, a strange thing happens. People applaud. Soon, recordings circulate. Jazz bands weave the tone into songs. Children whistle it walking to school. Politicians end rallies with it instead of applause. The sound becomes shorthand for order, energy, hope. It doesn't matter that it was meant to signal factory shifts. The country has rewritten its meaning. One evening, you sit in your office long after dark, the building empty except for the hum of machinery cooling in the distance. You press the button yourself, just once. The whistle rises through the night, sharp and perfect. You hear it roll across the valley, bouncing off the hills, blending with the faint echoes of other factories answering back. For a few seconds, it sounds like the whole world is singing in your key. When silence returns, it feels almost impossible to bear. The air seems thinner without that note holding it together. You rest your hand on the control lever, tempted to press it again, not to signal work, but to remind the world it's still alive. You don't. You just stand there, listening to the residue of your own creation. Somewhere beyond the hills, another whistle blows, then another, and another. The sound spreads like sunrise, bright and metallic, washing over everything until even the stars seem to shimmer in rhythm. For the first time in history, a nation doesn't wake to roosters, bells, or prayer. It wakes to you. The first one rises out of the fields like a promise. Rows of neat brick houses, white fences, clean streets that never seem to gather dust. You call it a model town, a place where every worker will have light, warmth, and a front porch to call their own. The air smells like milk and sugar even before the factory opens. There's music from the loudspeakers, a brass tune that keeps people moving in rhythm with one another. No one complains about long hours here. They don't need to. The hum of the vats and the gleam of the chocolate fountains are enough to convince them that purpose is a kind of rest. You build schools first large, symmetrical, and spotless. Each morning, children march in step with the factory whistle, carrying lunch pails embossed with your permitted logo. Teachers talk about arithmetic, industry, and the moral value of productivity. Even art class smells like cocoa. Then come the parks, perfectly trimmed, where no one ever litters because the grass looks too exact to disturb. Every bench bears the Hershey crest. Every lamppost hums faintly, as if tuned to the same frequency as the factory down the hill. You don't just build houses. You build an ecosystem of devotion. Grocery stores stock nothing bitter, nothing foreign. Streets are named after virtues: Prosperity Lane, Unity Avenue, Purpose Circle. At night, the lights from the factory paint the clouds bronze, and the townspeople call it the Northern Glow. They say it helps them sleep better. You don't correct them when you hear that they don't sleep much at all. The workers love you for it. They write letters thanking you for steady paychecks and warm homes, for chocolate bars handed out at school assemblies, for the sense that everything, finally, fits. The newspapers call it the Sweet Society. Investors call it Hershey's Genius. You call it Tuesday, because by now, you've started building the next one. Each new town follows the same patterned square grids, open plazas, fountains that smell faintly of cocoa butter. The churches are quiet, their stained glass depicting not saints, but scenes of harvest and machinery intertwined. The preachers use words like diligence and gratitude. Children play in the streets until the whistle sounds again, and then they scatter home like marbles rolling to their rightful place. The rhythm never breaks. You visit one of the new towns in Ohio on a Sunday. The train station smells like chocolate, and the air feels almost too clean. As you step off the platform, a band greets you with a rendition of the factory whistle anthem. People cheer, hats in the air. It feels less like a greeting and more like worship. You shake hands until your fingers ache, smiling the same smile that's been carved into the bronze statue in the square, the one of you holding a chocolate bar aloft like a torch. By dusk, you sit in the mayor's office, staring out the window at a horizon shaped by your own blueprints. The sun drops behind the smokestacks, and for a second the whole town looks gilded, like something preserved in amber. The factory whistle blows once more, long and low, and you can see every window flicker as people rise from their chairs, synchronizing again without even realizing it. The sound ripples outward, passing through the neat rows of houses and into the fields beyond, where more towns are already being mapped in your mind. When night finally comes, the streets glow amber, the same color as the syrup in the vats. Somewhere far off, a band is still playing the anthem softly, almost reverently. You lean back in your chair, watching the smoke curl from the factory like a prayer. The towns hum together now, all of them, connected by rails, rivers, and one idea that has grown larger than you ever planned, that happiness can be engineered, one bar at a time. The first essay appears in a Sunday paper under the title, The Ethics of Enjoyment. The author, a gray-bearded professor from somewhere respectable, argues that no nation should hinge its happiness on something edible, let alone something wrapped in gold foil. He calls your empire a confectionery illusion and asks whether joy can truly exist if it must be unwrapped. The editor places your photograph beside the column, smiling, immaculate, holding a bar like a sacrament. Within a week, the debate ignites. Radio hosts dissect the question between advertisements for your product. Is happiness chemical or moral? One asks, voice booming through static. A philosopher from Chicago claims your bars have blurred the boundary between appetite and enlightenment. Another, from Harvard, insists that the pursuit of pleasure has been democratized for the first time in history. One bite, one bliss, $1. You imagine them all sitting around mahogany tables, their hands trembling slightly from too many samples. University halls fill with students quoting you like scripture. If joy can be engineered, is it still joy? Reads one blackboard. In another classroom, someone has drawn your logo and written underneath it, Cogito ergo sum et suavis, I think, therefore I am sweet. Professors try to moderate the hysteria, but often fail. Halfway through their lectures, students pass around squares of your chocolate, like communion wafers, giggling as they melt on their tongues. Philosophy, it seems, now tastes like cocoa and caffeine. Even the clergy joins in. A priest in street. Louis delivers a sermon warning that no sweetness of the flesh can fill the soul, while another, in Boston, claims your bars are proof of divine invention. A theologian writes that perhaps the Almighty has chosen industry as the new Eden, and that your factories are its gardens. The letter finds its way to your desk. You read it twice and file it under Public Relations, Favorable. The papers can't keep up. The Atlantic prints a special issue titled The Hershey Paradox. The essays argue that mass-produced joy cheapens the human condition, while simultaneously celebrating the innovation that made it possible. One writer calls you the Plato of pleasure, another the Machiavelli of morale. You cut those clippings out and keep them in a drawer, though you never say why. At night, you lie awake, listening to the faint hum of the factory beyond your window. You think about those philosophers arguing under gaslight, debating whether happiness can be boxed, branded, and sold. You imagine telling them that happiness has always been packaged, just not so neatly. You've only made it visible, tangible, portable. Then come the artists. Painters start using chocolate tones in their work. Poets write odes titled The, Rapping, and Ode to the Bite. A playwright stages a drama in which the protagonist eats a bar and sees the world in color for the first time. It sells out for months. Critics call it the sweetest tragedy ever written. Eventually, the argument reaches absurdity. A philosopher from Vienna declares that happiness is not in the chocolate, but in the anticipation of it. A French intellectual counters that anticipation without fulfillment is cruelty. Therefore, chocolate is mercy. Their debate fills 27 pages of a literary journal, which you receive by post. The pages smell faintly of sugar. In one interview, a reporter asks if you've read any of these essays. You tell him yes, you have, and that they all miss the point. I never promised happiness, you say. I just gave it flavor. The line becomes famous before you even leave the building. Within a week, it's printed on billboards, engraved on wrappers, whispered in cafes. When the next mornings, the whistle sounds, you step outside and hear the faint echo of music from the town square. A brass band is playing again, the notes bright and familiar. The people sway, smiling, unwrapping bars in rhythm. The philosophers can keep their questions. The world has already chosen its answer, and it melts on the tongue. It starts with a letter hoof-printed, smudged with mud, and delivered to your office by a trembling farmhand who refuses to make eye contact. The stationery smells faintly of hay. We, the undersigned bovines of Hershey Dairy Division, it begins, demand fair compensation for extraordinary output, loss of sleep, and emotional distress caused by continuous exposure to an overstimulated workforce. You stare at it for a full minute before realizing it's signed with hoof marks curved, deliberate, almost artistic. The milk yield charts have been absurd for months. Numbers climb like mountains, lines bending the page, productivity higher than any known mammal should manage. You'd thought it was pride, or maybe patriotism. Turns out it's collective bargaining. By noon, the fields are empty except for a single sign hammered into the ground. No grass until terms met. Behind it, a herd of 200 cows stands in silent formation, facing the factory like soldiers on strike. Some chew methodically, but not the grass. They chew placards made from splintered fence posts, painted with slogans, "Moo means more," and "Equal cream, equal dreams." The foreman suggests calling the police. You tell him that would look terrible in the papers. Last week, a journalist compared your company town to paradise. The next headline cannot be, "Chocolate Tycoon Quells Cow Rebellion." You need subtlety. You need diplomacy. You need someone fluent in bovine politics. By afternoon, the protest grows theatrical. One particularly expressive Holstein, whom the workers have started calling Mother Creamer, steps forward wearing a wreath of buttercups and begins mooing in rhythm. Others join, lowing in harmony until the sound rolls across the valley, deep and deliberate. The townspeople gather on the fences to watch. Children clap along. Someone starts selling hot cocoa. The irony is almost too rich to taste. You decide to intervene personally. Standing at the fence line, you try reason. "Ladies," you begin, "we're all part of something historic here." A cow flicks her tail in your direction, unimpressed. You continue anyway, voice calm, measured. Progress requires sacrifice. At the word sacrifice, the entire herd shifts forward half a step. You can feel the ground tremble. One of them snorts. You retreat to your office and call a meeting. The legal team insists animals can't unionize. The marketing department disagrees. They think it's charming, maybe even profitable. "Imagine the ads," one says, "ethically sourced from empowered cows. People will love it." You tell them to leave before you do something rash. By evening, the cows have erected a makeshift encampment by the creek. Lanterns glow between hay bales. Something has built a podium from an old milk crate. A calf reads from a prepared statement in slow, deliberate moos that a translator, one of your more empathetic veterinarians, interprets aloud. They demand hazard pay, cooler working hours, and a say in feed composition. They also want music in the barns, preferably something less industrial. The next morning, production stops completely. No milk trucks, no churns, no cream. Workers loiter in the break room, restless and twitchy, stirring empty mugs. You glance at the clock, realizing how quiet the factory feels without the endless flow of milk through the pipes. Even the whistle sounds lonely. You cave before lunch. A formal agreement is drafted. Modest pay raises for caretakers, better ventilation in the barns, and an emotional enrichment program that includes regular brushing, soft lighting, and phonograph sessions. The cows sign the document again, with hoof marks, and disperse peacefully, tails swishing in smug unison. By sunset, the churns spin again. The milk tastes faintly sweeter, maybe out of pride. You stand by the window, watching them graze under the golden light, the valley restored to motion. Somewhere below, Mother Creamer pauses mid-chew and looks up at your office window. For a moment, you could swear she nods. You nod back. Then you pour yourself a glass of milk, union-approved, full-fat, and toast to progress, whatever form it takes. The first sign that Congress is paying attention comes in the form of a letter printed on embossed stationery and sealed with what looks suspiciously like melted chocolate. Hearings will commence regarding confectionery influence on public behavior, it reads. You'd think the government was preparing for war, not sweets. The Subcommittee on Agriculture and Moral Integrity summons you to D.C., where men in suits squint at you as though they can smell sugar through the walls. They talk about public hyperactivity and economic imbalance, but no one can make it sound serious, while the air outside smells faintly of cocoa. You sit through hours of speeches, nodding politely, waiting for them to remember that your company currently employs more Americans than the railroads. A senator from Kansas accuses you of replacing religion with dessert. You almost thank him for the compliment. Things might have gone differently if not for the refreshments. Someone, no one remembers, who had the bright idea to serve your newest product at the afternoon recess, the Mint Rush Edition, a green-tinted marvel laced with just enough of your energizing extract to make the floor staff skip back to their seats. You'd meant it as a marketing test, not a coup, but within minutes, the chamber hums like a beehive. The Speaker of the House, previously famous for dozing through budget discussions, unwraps his sample mid-session. You watch as he bites once, chews twice, then straightens in his chair like a man reborn. His pupils dilate slightly. His voice gains volume and velocity. This country, he declares, was built on innovation. The gallery erupts in applause before anyone realizes he's gone wildly off script. He pounds the gavel with rhythmic enthusiasm, his words tumbling faster than the stenographer can follow. Gentlemen, perhaps the issue is not the product, but the failure to provide adequate distribution. From that moment, the hearing transforms into something unrecognizable. Senators interrupt each other not with objections, but with praise for the entrepreneurial vigor of the confectionery sector. The air thickens with rhetoric and peppermint. Someone proposes a federal partnership to harness America's sweetness as soft power abroad. Another calls for a chocolate infrastructure bill. Laughter echoes off the marble, but no one stops taking notes. You sit perfectly still, hands folded, the picture of humility. Inside, you can feel the room tilting in your favor. An aide passes a note down the aisle. Whoever formulated that bar deserves a medal. You resist the urge to volunteer your name. The speaker, flushed and radiant, motions to adjourn early, declaring that further regulation would stifle national morale. It passes unanimously. Outside the Capitol, reporters swarm you. Cameras flash. Microphones appear like bees around a flower. Did you anticipate this outcome? One shouts. You smile, non-committal. I believe in the American palate, you say. It has never failed us. The quote hits every front page by morning. Within days, the market shifts again. Stocks rise. Legislators send for more samples. Committees that once debated prohibition now order your bars in bulk for their staff rooms. The speaker himself pens a column in the Post, titled, Sweet Liberty, Why Industry Deserves Trust. You clip it for your records. Behind closed doors, the whispers start. Maybe your company should help draft new trade agreements. Maybe cocoa should be treated like currency. You never confirm anything. But the next time you're invited to testify, it's not a summons, it's a celebration. Washington has tasted the future, and it comes wrapped in foil. The first rumor comes from the coast whispers that the government is drafting new purity laws, that sugar will fall under controlled substances, that indulgence itself is to be outlawed. The newspapers call it the Moral Renewal Act, though everyone knows it means something simpler. Prohibition, reborn and dusted with cocoa powder. You read the headlines in silence, while the room buzzes with worry. For the first time in months, the factory floor quiets. Workers glance at each other, half in disbelief, half in defiance. You tell them not to panic, but the panic has already begun fermenting. Candy shops shutter early. Cafes sell their last slices of chocolate cake to customers who chew like they're saying goodbye. In Chicago, men in hats buy cases of your bars and stash them in basements, whispering about the coming dry spell. The stockpiles look less like dessert and more like survival. Then comes the announcement. Effective immediately, the manufacture and sale of hyperstimulant confections shall be restricted by federal decree. It's signed in black ink, but the words burn brighter than fire. They say it's about public safety, about the psychological dependencies forming among citizens, but no one buys it. You know better. The nation is addicted not to vice, but to the rhythm you built into its bloodstream. The next morning, the first protest begins outside a corner store in Philadelphia. Housewives bang pots against empty shelves, shouting, "We want our bars!" Within hours, the crowd grows until it floods the street. Someone waves a half-eaten Hershey wrapper like a flag. Someone else starts chanting your name. By noon, the police arrive not to disperse them, but to ask if anyone has a spare bar. Within days, the unrest spreads. Bakers march, carrying whisks like torches. Train conductors threaten to strike unless the snack cars are reinstated. Even the clergy falters. A priest in Ohio admits during Sunday Mass that his sermons were never so lively without a square of chocolate before speaking. Children hold signs that say, "No cocoa, no class." School teachers pretend not to see them sneaking bites from hidden stashes. The government doubles down. Agents raid candy factories, seizing vats of syrup like contraband liquor. But the people adapt fast. Secret kitchens bloom in basements and barns. Housewives melt sugar in kettles, stirring in whatever powder they can scavenge, whispering recipes like passwords. In smoky back rooms, men exchange foil-wrapped bars the way their grandfathers once traded cigars. You're not innocent in all this. You watch from your office window as the night fills with distant fires, bonfires of wrappers and wooden crates, part protest, part ritual. For a moment, you wonder if this is what revolution smells like, scorched sugar and smoke. Then the crowd outside begins to sing, not a hymn, not a march, but the whistle anthem. It rolls through the valley like thunder, echoing against the walls of your factory. The following week, a train is stopped in street. Louis, inside, inspectors find 50 crates labeled agricultural supplies. When they open them, the scent of chocolate floods the platform. The conductor just smiles and says, "Guess the cows needed morale boosters." The story hits every front page. Within a day, the law becomes impossible to enforce. Congress convenes in emergency session, but the galleries are packed with citizens waving candy bars instead of petitions. The speaker, looking more haggard than ever, taps his gavel once and sighs. "The people have spoken," he says, voice flat but weary. The repeal passes without debate. When the news reaches Hershey, the bells ring without being told to. Workers pour into the streets, tossing bars into the air like confetti. Someone hands you a piece of the Mint Rush edition, slightly melted from their pocket. You bite into it slowly, the flavor sharp and cool. Around you, the town hums with laughter, the air alive again. Prohibition is over, before it ever truly begins, undone not by politics, but by appetite. You look out over the cheering crowd and think not for the first time that no government can outlaw joy if it's wrapped in enough foil. It begins the way all forbidden things do, with a whisper. The bars disappear from storefronts, replaced by hollow shelves and nervous clerks who speak in half sentences. Officially, production is paused pending further review. Unofficially, a black market economy flowers, overnight, fragrant with sugar and secrecy. You see it first in alleyways, where men in trench coats trade foil-wrapped parcels like state secrets. Each exchange ends with a look of awe, then a bite taken reverently, as if partaking in Holy Communion. The smuggling networks organize faster than law enforcement can blink. Former factory workers, desperate and loyal, form the backbone of what the newspapers later call the cocoa underground. They know the machines, the routes, the schedules. Milk trucks become moving vaults. Church basements double as kitchens. Chocolate isn't just contraband now, it's art, ephemeral and priceless. Every piece is handmade, wrapped in silence, passed hand to hand like a masterpiece that must never see daylight. You hear stories of sculptors in Philadelphia carving busts from hardened fudge, of painters in New York using melted cocoa as pigment. At night, secret salons gather in candlelight where the wealthy bid on bars engraved with your pime. Initials. The bidders don't eat them, of course. They display them under glass, the way aristocrats once kept diamonds. In this new world, sweetness is currency, and rebellion is coated in caramel. One evening, a crate arrives at your door unmarked, save for a faint scent you'd know anywhere. Inside, nestled in straw, is a single bar stamped with your original logo. Beneath it lies a note in looping script. For the founder, from the faithful. You hold it carefully, as though it might dissolve in your hands. For a moment, you consider tasting it, but you don't. You wrap it again, slide it into a drawer, and lock it away. On the streets, the trade grows bold. Children act as runners, slipping through alleys with satchels full of sweets. Housewives hide bars beneath laundry baskets. Jazz clubs turn into cocoa speakeasies, where doormen ask for passwords like bittersweet and nougat. Patrons dip cubes into their coffee, laughing too loudly, eyes wide and wild. The music swings faster, the trumpets sharper. You can almost feel the rhythm traveling through the walls of the city, pulsing, infectious. Government posters warn of the dangers of unregulated confection. They depict trembling hands, sleepless eyes, families torn apart by excess. The propaganda would be funny if it weren't so effective. But the artists fight back. Pamphlets appear with slogans like, "Taste is freedom," and "They can't ban bliss." Your face becomes an icon, stylized into bold outlines, eyes glowing like a saint's. When the raids come, they're clumsy, half-hearted things. Agents seize vats and mixers, pose for photographs beside confiscated truffles. But the people never stop. There's too much craving in them, too much memory of joy. You hear rumors of tunnels under your old factory, of hidden chambers where the mixers still churn. You never confirm it, but when the wind blows from the north, there's a sweetness in the air that no one can quite explain. One night, you attend a gathering in a forgotten warehouse on the edge of town. The lights are low, the air thick with warmth. A woman in a red scarf passes you a bar, thin and hand-poured, wrapped in gold leaf. "Original formula," she whispers. You break it in half. The snap echoes through the room. You taste it, and time collapses factory floors, brass whistles, laughter spilling into morning. Someone begins to play the anthem, slow and soft, on a violin. The notes shimmer, fragile and familiar. Around you, people close their eyes, as if listening to a memory they're afraid to lose. You realize then that chocolate stopped being food long ago. It's become myth, a rebellion that melts on the tongue and refuses to fade. Outside, the night smells faintly of sugar and smoke. The city hums with secrets. Somewhere in the dark, another batch begins to cool. The train clatters through the mountains, each turn revealing a world cleaner than you deserve. Snow folds over itself like forgiveness. The suitcase at your feet is heavier than it should be, not just with notebooks and papers, but with the weight of every decision that tasted sweet going down and burned later. You rest your hand on the leather handle, as if it might leap open and spill your sins onto the aisle. The other passengers sip cocoa from porcelain cups. You look at the color and laugh quietly to yourself. They have no idea. Switzerland smells of altitude and restraint. The air is crisp enough to scrape your lungs clean. The locals move slowly, deliberately, as if the clocks here tick in a different rhythm, one that doesn't pulse with caffeine and chaos. You tell yourself you'll blend in, live quietly, let the world forget. But when you unpack, the scent of cocoa powder escapes like a ghost. Even here, it follows you. The hotel clerk recognizes your name but doesn't say it aloud. He just raises one eyebrow, the kind of European gesture that holds entire paragraphs. You hand him a few francs, and he hands you silence in return. It's a fair trade. The room upstairs overlooks a valley so pristine it hurts to look at. Somewhere down there, cows move through snow like slow thoughts. You wonder if they've unionized yet. At night, you unpack the suitcase. The recipes are written in your hand. Though some pages are sticky with sugar, others browned from proximity to heat. There's one for the super bar, another for mint rush, and a dozen failed experiments that never saw the light of day. You stack them neatly, like relics. The final page simply reads, Version 11, energy, but kind. You can't remember writing it. Sleep is a fragile thing. When it comes, it brings sounds, factory whistles, blending with the hiss of steam, crowds chanting, laughter melting into sirens. You wake before dawn, sweating, heart racing. The Alps outside don't care. They've seen every kind of empire rise and fall. You open the window and let the cold bite your skin, hoping it can reach what heat could not. Days pass, then weeks. You walk to the village for bread and news you pretend not to want. The papers mention chocolate again, illicit still, though softer now, almost nostalgic. A journalist calls it the taste of lost ambition. You fold the paper into your coat pocket and try not to smile. In the cafe, they serve their cocoa pale and restrained, more milk than sin. You drink it slowly, pretending it's enough. Every so often, someone writes to you. Letters from America arrive months late, smuggled through sympathetic hands. Former workers, old friends, even politicians all speaking in the same coded tone. We've kept the fires going, one says. The smell hasn't left the valley. Another claims your whistle still sounds at dawn, though the factory's been shut for years. You picture it rusted pipes, wind moving through hollow vents, creating a note no one can silence. You start writing, again, though not for business. The notebook fills with sketches, odd formulas, half-mad dreams, cocoa ratios, sugar curves, the occasional philosophical aside. What if joy was never meant to be rationed? Sometimes you imagine walking into a Swiss cafe one morning, handing over a bar wrapped in plain foil, and watching the world begin again. But you don't. You just keep writing. One evening, snow begins to fall. The flakes drift past your window like the ash of something that burned too cleanly to remember. You brew a cup of cocoa, old habits guiding your hands. It's simpler. Now milk, sugar, warmth. You take a sip, close your eyes, and listen. For a heartbeat, you think you can hear it again, the faint whistle in the distance, rising and falling like a memory that refuses to fade. The train hisses like a sigh of surrender as you step onto the platform, the station alive with the usual hum of departures, steam, chatter, boots on marble. Your coat hangs heavy on your shoulders, pockets lined with the evidence of everything that came before. The air smells faintly metallic, clean, but not quite innocent. You find your seat, lower yourself onto the worn leather, and only then notice the heat blooming at your hip. You reach into your pocket and feel it soft, yielding, almost alive. The last coca bar. The foil crinkles weakly under your touch, its edges slick with what used to be structure. You pull it out just far enough to see the logo, still gleaming through the smudge. Hershey's. 2 syllables that built an empire, now melting into anonymity in your palm. The conductor's whistle sounds, sharp as a memory, and the train lurches forward. You should throw it away. You tell yourself that more than once. But there's a gravity in the thing, a pull stronger than nostalgia. It's not just chocolate, it's everything that came after it. The towns, the music, the sleepless nights, the anthem that replaced silence, the sweetness that rewired a day, the country's pulse. You press the foil flat against your knee, trying to steady your hands. The bar yields further, oozing slightly through the seam. Outside, the Alps slip past like ghosts, gray peaks crowned with light, valleys stitched with rivers so blue they look imagined. The train car rocks gently, the rhythm too steady, too calm. You envy it. Across the aisle, an old woman knits, her needles clicking like clock hands keeping time for the rest of the world. You wonder if she ever tasted your creation, if she ever stayed awake for days without knowing why. You unwrap the bar, slowly, the foil parts like confession, revealing a warped, glistening shape that still smells the same sweet, sharp, faintly dangerous. You hold it to the light from the window, watching it catch the sun before it begins to slip again, dark syrup pooling where edges once were. It's not beautiful anymore, but it's honest. You break off what's left of the corner and let it dissolve on your poor tongue. The rush is weaker now, gentler than before. The formula's potency fades with time, but the echo remains. It's not the jolt that hits you, it's the memory of it. The thrum in your blood, the way the world once leaned forward when your bars hit the shelves. You close your eyes, and it's all there. The factory's heartbeat, the cows lined in perfect rows, the laughter of workers who never slept, the whistle's cry rising through the valley like prayer. When you open your eyes again, the window has fogged. You draw a finger through the condensation, tracing a crude version of the old logo. It looks childish, but maybe that's fitting. You built the world's most powerful addiction out of innocence. After all, something meant to delight that ended up consuming. The train jerks slightly, and your reflection in the glass wavers. For a second, it looks like you're smiling. You fold the foil back over what's left of the bar, careful, almost ceremonial. You press the edges down, sealing it as neatly as you can, though your fingers are sticky with melted sugar. Then you slip it into the breast pocket of your coat, close enough to feel its warmth fading against your heart. As the train rounds another curve, you glance back toward the rear car, half expecting to see smoke rising from the distance, a plume of cocoa and ambition reaching for the sky. There's nothing there, just clean air, white peaks, a horizon scrubbed free of your name. The conductor passes by, tipping his hat. "Headed far?" he asks. You look at him for a long moment, then shake your head. "Just away," you say. He nods and moves on. The rails hum beneath you, steady and endless. You lean your head against the glass and let the sound swallow you whole. The suitcase rests by your feet, the pocket cool again. The last coca bar is still in there, sealed in silver, melting quietly into history. You sit at a cafe that smells faintly of burnt espresso and nostalgia, the kind of place where people pretend not to remember who they were. The cup in front of you steams politely, the chocolate bar beside it perfectly ordinary, wrapped in paper that feels too light, too clean. You peel it open slowly, expecting nothing and hoping for everything. The foil crackles like the memory of applause. The first bite is fine, sweet enough, smooth enough, but thin. The taste fades before you can find the soul of it. You wait for that familiar spark, the surge, the pulse, but it doesn't come. It's just sugar now, polite and domesticated. You chew in silence and realize you're chasing a ghost that no longer lives in the recipe. Around you, the world hums in a lower key. The chatter is softer, the laughter less frantic. People eat their chocolate without ceremony, without trembling hands or sleepless nights. You wonder if this is what peace tastes like, or just amnesia in edible form. The waiter walks by and glances at the wrapper. "Good choice," he says. "Classic." You nod, though you can't help thinking he's wrong. Classics are supposed to endure. This one only reminds you of what's missing. The impossible energy that once made every mouthful feel like creation itself. You look down at the table and think of the old factory. The noise, the light, the way the air used to buzz with the smell of invention. There was rhythm in it, a pulse that synced with your own. You can still see the vats churning, the workers laughing too hard to breathe, the whistle calling out across the valley. The town used to dance to that sound. Now the only music is the quiet hiss of the espresso machine. You take another bite and it sticks to your teeth, cloying instead of electric. It's strange how something can be technically perfect and spiritually hollow. You picture the modern process, sterile, efficient, every molecule accounted for. No accidents, no passion, no danger. Just science in a pretty wrapper. The world wanted safer, sweets, and you gave them the blueprint. A child at the next table unwraps her own bar, eyes lighting up as she takes a bite. For a second you think you see at the spark, the wonder. But it's different now, smaller, contained. She chews thoughtfully, then goes back to her coloring book. You try to feel envy and fail. The window beside you reflects your face faintly in the glass. There are lines now where excitement used to live. You look older, but not necessarily wiser, just quieter. You trace a finger through the condensation, drawing a rough shape of the old logo. The letters look wrong somehow, too simple. You wipe it away before anyone can see. Outside, the snow falls softly, powdered sugar over a country that forgot how to rush. The factories are silent, their chimneys cold. Somewhere out there, the whistle might still exist, rusted, mute, waiting for a reason to sing again. You imagine blowing it once more, just to see if the world remembers how to move. Instead, you finish the bar. The last bite is the same as the first, pleasant, forgettable. You fold the wrapper neatly and tuck it into your coat pocket, though you're not sure why. Maybe to remind yourself that magic was once man-made, that joy had a formula, that ambition, when it burned too hot, could still sweeten everything before it vanished. The waiter asks if you'd like another. You shake your head. "No," you say softly, almost kindly. "It's not the same." He shrugs and walks away. You sit there a while longer, letting the taste fade from your tongue, until all that's left is the memory of how wild it used to be when happiness had a flavor you could feel in your pulse. It comes back to you quietly, without invitation, like a scent carried by warm air. You sit by the window, eyes half closed, and the memory rises whole. The hum, the steam, the way the night inside the factory seemed alive. You can still feel it in your chest, that pulse of invention wrapped in cocoa and metal. The first night everything began, when ambition smelled like heat and milk and something faintly dangerous. You remember standing over the vat, the room lit in gold from the lamps, every machine trembling with potential. The workers moved around you, faces slick with sweat, eyes bright as children's. No one spoke much. There was no need. The sound filled everything, the turning gears, the bubbling mix, the low electric murmur of creation itself. The air was so thick with sugar you could taste it just by breathing. You'd told yourself you were chasing flavor, not immortality. But when that first batch came together, when the scent curled up from the vat and the taste hit your tongue like lightning, you knew something larger had arrived. The hum deepened, steady and sure, as if the building itself had taken a breath. You could swear it was breathing with you, whispering a promise only you could hear. People like to talk about invention as brilliance, a flash, a single spark, but it wasn't light that night. It was warmth. It was rhythm. The steady beating of pistons, the hiss of steam, the churning of something that couldn't be undone. The world outside was asleep, but you were awake enough for everyone. Awake and alive, and sure that what you'd made wasn't just food. It was future. You smile now, faintly, at the thought of how naive that was and how beautiful. The first worker to taste it laughed, that raw, surprise sound that no one could fake. Another took a bite and leaned back like he'd been struck. You remember their faces, glowing in the half-light, and the way the hum seemed to answer their laughter, growing louder until the whole room vibrated with it. That was before the headlines and the anthems, before senators and smuggling, and the slow unraveling of everything too good to last. Back then, it was just a factory and a dream that tasted better than it should have. You hadn't meant to start a movement. You just wanted to make something that made sense, something that reminded people the world could still surprise them. The hum lingers in your ears even now, years later. When you close your eyes, you can feel the vibration under your feet again, like standing on the edge of a secret too large to speak aloud. The night outside had been silent except for that sound, and you'd thought it might never end. Sometimes, in quieter moments, you wonder if the factory still stands. You imagine its walls cracked, windows clouded, gears rusted but intact. Maybe the hum is still there, faint and buried, echoing in the bones of the building. Machines don't forget so easily. Neither do you. You lean back in your chair, let the memory play out to the end, the hum fading into the soft rhythm of your pulse, the smell of cocoa thick as prayer, the glow that made even the shadows look alive. That was the night you found out creation could sing, that invention had a heartbeat, and that the line between genius and madness tastes exactly like chocolate melting on your tongue. You smile again, eyes open now. The world outside is quiet, polite, efficient. But somewhere, in the corner of your mind, the factory hums on steady, eternal, waiting for the next spark. History, when it finally gets around to remembering you, does it sloppily. Textbooks call it the chocolate incident. Scholars write essays with titles like Sweet Madness, Industrial Desire, and the Human Condition. They reduce everything to numbers and footnotes, output statistics, production curves, the gross domestic sugar index, the rhythm of it all, the pulse that once drove a nation to move faster, dream bigger, laugh harder. That part is gone, but you still hear it. It hums under the quiet of modern life, faint but steady, like a heartbeat muffled beneath concrete. It comes back in the smallest moments, the rustle of foil, the hiss of steam from a passing train, the laughter of a child biting into something too sweet. You tell yourself it's memory, nothing more, but the sound is too precise to be nostalgia. It's the rhythm of cocoa and chaos, and it refuses to fade. You've seen how the world polished the story. They turned your wild century into museum glass, polite, sterilized, unsticky. In the exhibits, your name is etched in bronze, your bars displayed under soft light, their labels called Artifacts of Ambition. A plaque describes your empire as a testament to human ingenuity. You stand there sometimes, unnoticed in the crowd, and think, that's not quite right. Ingenuity, yes, but also hunger, delirium, noise. No plaque could capture that hum. Sometimes, you dream of the factory still running, somewhere deep beneath time. You can almost hear the pistons firing, the belts turning, the clang of spoons against steel vats. Workers laughing between shifts, the whistle splitting the dawn, the whole town vibrating to the same invisible song. Even now, the memory moves through you like a current. Your pulse tries to keep time with it, but the rhythm slips away, always a beat ahead. The historians miss the best parts. The nights that smelled like sugar and sweat. The mornings when the air shimmered from caffeine and ambition. They'll never know how it felt to stand in the middle of that hurricane and feel the world bend toward you. To know that joy and danger shared the same flavor. You hear the younger ones talk about progress, about innovation, about efficiency. They say machines are smarter now, faster, cleaner. You smile at that word, cleaner, as if brilliance was ever meant to be neat. The old machines weren't perfect. They leaked, they shook, they sang. They had personality, mood, defiance. You wonder if anyone will ever build something that alive again. Occasionally, someone finds a bar in an attic, a relic wrapped in gold foil paper that time forgot. They handle it like a relic from a lost religion, which, in a way, it is. The newspapers print photos. Possible original coca bar discovered. Experts debate authenticity, tracing sugar residues, measuring caffeine percentages, writing reports that conclude nothing. But you look at the picture, and you know. You can tell by the way the foil folds, by the exact slant of the embossed letters. That was yours, and you can hear it, faintly, just from looking. The hum, the chaos. It's strange how history forgets what it can't measure. The flavor's gone, the laughter faded, but sound, the rhythm lingers. You could walk through a modern city, all glass and silence, and still find echoes of your factory in the thrum of an engine, in the syncopated click of shoes on pavement. You finish your coffee and stand, the museum already closing behind you. The evening air smells faintly of rain and, impossibly, of cocoa. You don't look back. You don't have to. Somewhere, something mechanical sighs into motion. A vent, a train, a heartbeat, and you feel it again. Steady and low. The rhythm that once changed everything. History forgets, but the sound remembers.